piece.
Okay, so my guess was somewhere around two.
So I know actually Ryan said his brother, his name's Tracy, he's getting married. His wife,
Oh, that's
wife
right. I
said
remember him saying
the gothic fairy
It's out of-
she wants everyone in black.
Have they, were there any?
He would also
protests
prefer
today?
if you feel comfortable wearing black lipstick.
We should be on YouTube.
Okay.
You know,
Did you get a fake tattoo?
No, but
USD
or the Jason. So I just ask him all the time, like, hey, like, how much do you talk?
Yeah, okay, let's get started. Welcome to the welcome to the May 1st North Logan City Council meeting. We will excuse Mark Hansey tonight, who is out of town. We will start with a pledge by Buzzy, or led by Buzzy, and then after which Kenny will say the prayer.
The audience, please rise and repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we are so grateful to Thee for the abundance of blessings that Thou hast given us, and we're so grateful to live in such a wonderful valley and such a wonderful city with such wonderful neighbors around us. And we're grateful for the moisture Thou hast blessed us with, and ask to please continue to bless us with what we need throughout this summer. And we're grateful that we can be here in the City Council meeting this evening, and we please ask You to please guide us with wisdom and with insight into the issues that are going to be before us here today, that we can make decisions that will benefit our community and be in the best interest of our citizens. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Emily,
Second?
second by Buzzy, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we do have some meeting minutes to approve. We have 3 sets, I believe. Did you say 4? Oh, because of the closed
be it.
session? Okay, can I get a motion unless there are any changes with that?
Go ahead, Buzzy. I don't want to
Uh,
step on the senior city council member's toes. No.
Oh, Emily's on one tonight, right? Motion to approve the minutes of previous city council meetings as presented.
Okay, motion by Buzzy, second by Joni, all in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Okay, Alan, will you take us through follow-up and review of action items?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Going through these different items, we won't go over the Civic Center at length. We'll talk about that later in the meeting. But as you can see, it's nearly completed. In fact, the next couple of weeks, it should be completed. Jumping down through, we'll talk about a few items below related to HR at the end of the meeting as well. Water right now, Jordan and the staff, they're working very hard on some grants related to water for our capital improvement plans. That's the main item there. Sewer, we're still working through our trunk line project with our bond from the DEQ that will probably move forward on this summer, hopefully, and put in a portion of that line that's in Logan City. Streets, they're fixing their crack sealer because they can start in the next month or two. In preparation, they'll start their crack sealing so that they can do all the surface treatments over the summer, the chip sealing, the slurry sealing. So they're very busy right now getting that up and running. There's been a large amount of stormwater this weekend, so they're updating things associated with stormwater and the streets department. Engineering, there's a lot of work right now on the roundabout designs, working with property owners, getting things through the UDOT process, endless amounts of steps that we need to go through in that. We've been communicating with the property owners there that are affected by the roundabout as well. 1200 East, similar project going through, working with the affected property owners, and then hopefully going out to bid in the next month or so on that project. Parks, hats off to the Parks Department. They're helping install the landscaping surrounding the new city office, which is saving the city a considerable amount of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars actually. And then they should have the splash pads up and running. There was some repair work on each of them. but they should have them up and running by the early summer.
They are still planning on having Meadowview one open again, or is that?
Yep. So they had to order several parts for the Meadowview one, but
Yeah.
it should be up and running a little bit later than the Elkridge one, but probably around mid-June is what they're shooting for.
As long as I can tell my neighbors.
Okay, tell them end of June, just so they're not disappointed.
July.
Then they'll be pleasantly surprised. So trails, we were able to submit a RAPS application for a tri-city and county segment of that trail for feasibility and study, which would go from North Logan through Hyde Park, through county property and through Smithfield. It's great that we're working collaboratively. North Logan's been putting in their segments, but now the other two cities are on board, and it's been a great relationship trying to put in that Bonneville Shoreline Trail. So luckily this past week, we were able to meet with the county RAPS committee, and they gave that a positive support for that project. So we'll be working on that this summer as well, putting together that study. Recreation, they have the Amazing Race coming up. Recreation Department, we were also able to submit a feasibility study for a recreation center. It's a valley-wide study, but it's a collaborative effort between 6 or 7 cities with other cities supporting this process. And so that went through the RAPS committee and also received a positive recommendation regarding that project. North Logan City incidentally has the largest amount of recreation in the valley by far. The next city is not even close. I think we're more than double the next closest city. And part of that has to do with the greatest event in the history of the world, which is the Pumpkin Walk, but we'll get to that later on. Jumping down through some of these other departments. Sorry, the cemetery, they're prepping the cemetery in addition to the regular duties of handling burials, and the Memorial Day program will come up on the 27th. So watch for that. Community development, the Planning Commission doesn't have a meeting this week. However, they are still working on the master plan, and the next major items that we'll be working on is the grandfathered lot of record and a few other items. It's going to be a busy next couple of months for Planning Commission and for Scott Perks. Looking through here, economic development, we'll talk about one thing tonight related to that. There is a lot of progress going on right now in several buildings. And so watch for that in the coming weeks. I think the only one that I'm at liberty to announce is that Sweeto Burrito is coming back into the original Sweeto Burrito building, which will be fantastic for that area. There's a lot of excitement about that. Jumping down through treasurer, we will be hiring another receptionist. One of our receptionists is moving, so that's unfortunate. She's been doing a great job, so we'll have to hire a new receptionist. Human resources, we'll talk about that a little bit later tonight. There's several things taking place in the human resources department, just things that are about staff culture, appreciation, those types of things across the board. We'll talk about budget tonight, city recorder, library. We'll talk about events coming up, but they do have their, I think it's just called the Star Wars party, but it was going to be on May the 4th, be with you. But it's moved now, I think, to the 10th. It's not this Friday, but next Friday when they'll have that event. And then their major kickoff is the night of the June 3rd. Same day as the city ribbon cutting for the new city office. We'll go over a few items with police later on in the meeting, along with fire department here shortly. We want to thank them for being here, but sorry, I skipped through a lot of those things pretty quickly. Are there any questions on any particular item or any particular department?
Helen kind of did talk briefly about those two RAPS funding recommendations, but those are both a really big deal for North Logan, and and we were fortunate to be represented on both of those by staff, primarily Alan and Jordan and Ryan. So, and I think Jesse as well, right? And so, and we were the only ones. So they just did a really great job to advocate for both of those sources of funding that really will do exactly what RAPS is created for. So I was really proud of North Logan's performance in that situation. So
those projects, just so everyone knows, those two projects are in addition to Pumpkin Walk, which received a small grant, and the North Logan's regular project. So we have a large park improvement project, which is Elkridge East. mainly a playground, is what we're applying for through that area. So, these are projects in addition to those. So sorry, I should have pointed that out.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Alan. Any questions for him on those? Okay, then we'll move to recognition of an exemplary staff member. And today that is Keaton Stewart. Jordan Oldham nominated him and he said, "I'm nominating Keaton Stewart for exemplary employee. Keaton has been a huge help lately with all of the major projects the water department has going on. He's not afraid to jump in a hole and get to work. He's a great asset to the team and a terrific man. We're thankful for his hard work and dedication." I think Keaton's one of those that I always see when we drive past and probably don't recognize exactly what he does, but we'd miss him if he stopped doing what he's doing. So we're appreciative to him. Jordan, if you'd pass that along from the council, let's give him a hand of applause. Okay, now we'll move on to a proclamation recognizing fire and EMS department. My understanding is that today there was a luncheon for you guys and duty called and you didn't even get to enjoy the luncheon that they had planned for you. I'm sorry, this will be much less of a reward, but all the same, we want to make sure that you know that we appreciate you. So I'll read the proclamation that we have. It says, whereas firefighters dedicate their lives to the protection of life and property, and sometimes that dedication is in the form of countless hours volunteered over many years. In others, it is many selfless years working in the industry. In all cases, it risks the ultimate sacrifice of a firefighter's life. And whereas International Firefighters Day is a time where the world's community can recognize and honor the sacrifices that firefighters make to ensure that their communities and environment are as safe as possible, it is also a day in which current and past firefighters can be thanked for their contributions. And whereas this day gives our community a special opportunity to express their heartfelt gratitude for the incalculable contributions which our firefighters so generously bestow upon us. Now, therefore, I, Lindsay Peterson, Mayor, on behalf of the City of North Logan, do hereby proclaim May 1st, 2024 as International Firefighters Day. And I encourage all citizens to show support and appreciation to our city, county, state, and federal firefighters who protect our lives and property so diligently throughout the year, and by remembering past firefighters who dedicated their lives to preserve our safety. If you'd join me in giving them a hand of applause. And once again, just to add to that, we so appreciate the work that you guys do, and you make us all look good because we know that we're represented well, and we're so excited for the work that you're doing and for the certification that we're seeking right now. You really just represent North Logan so well. So thank you so much. Okay, we will move on to a proclamation recognizing Pumpkin Walk sponsors. This is another long proclamation. So firefighters, this is your cue to go if you want to. You're welcome to. This one says, whereas the North Logan Pumpkin Walk was created to help bring the individuals of the city together in a spirit of cooperation and community, and whereas the North Logan Pumpkin Walk now brings over 60,000 individuals each year to North Logan City from around the world to enjoy the artistic and creative talents of the local community, and whereas the North Logan Pumpkin Walk is the largest volunteer managed and operated event in the state of Utah, and whereas the North Logan Pumpkin Walk is made possible through the generous donations of local businesses and individuals in the community. Now, therefore, I, Lindsay Peterson, Mayor, on behalf of the City of North Logan, do formally recognize the sponsors of the North Logan Pumpkin Walk and encourage all citizens to show support and appreciation to the local volunteers and generous businesses who make this annual event a reality in North Logan City. Just to add to that, truly, as we are seeking funding from RAPS, and we're representing North Logan City in the Valley, and then also on a state level, we're always so proud to be able to say what is happening just based on volunteer-led service with the Pumpkin Walk. So we're so appreciative of the way that you guys represent us as a city and for just the phenomenal event that you pull off every single year. So let's give them a hand of applause, the donors. And then if I could have the Pumpkin Walk Committee come up and maybe help hand out these awards, I will read each. I don't know if we have every person here, every sponsor. But if you guys wouldn't mind just coming up, and maybe we have some I guess plaques. So if you don't mind. So they're not. So Let me pull up that. Yeah, let's do, maybe when they all come up. Sorry. Alan, where did I lose that? I had
It's
it
in that
up.
Folder.
Do you have it?
Just sorry, you guys. I had this pulled up and then I lost it. There we go. Okay, so we'll start with Lee's Marketplace. Do we have anyone representing Lee's here? Okay, I know that they donate a lot of treats for the people who come through the pumpkin walk, and they're so generous and great to sponsor the pumpkin walk every year. Do we have anyone from Macy's? Okay. Macy's, same thing. They donate tens of thousands of treats. Pepperidge Farm, same thing, tens of thousands of yummy treats. I know that we do have someone from Cache Valley Transit District. Thank you. Come on up and get a plaque. Thank you. The CVTD donates buses and drivers. Maybe we'll do, if you'll stay close and we'll just do a picture with everyone. They donate buses and drivers to transport people to the event, averaging over 10,000 riders each year. How about the Cache Valley Visitors Bureau? I recognize you. Every year they donate thousands of dollars in advertising along the Wasatch Front. Cache Valley Hospital, Blake, come on up. This is the CEO, Blake Rose. We're so lucky to have a hospital in our borders. They staff the first aid tent at the Pumpkin Walk, bringing medical supplies and equipment and donating thousands of dollars in employee time. And then Rocky Mountain Power. All right. I'm going to read Alan's pun, but just know it's under protest. It says, for many years, they have donated to help us keep the lights on at the pumpkin walk. So we appreciate that. Let's do a big picture if you guys don't mind. Or Johnny, jump in. We're gonna jump in. Good to see you.
Thanks for coming.
Slightly higher shoes than normal, but not super high.
Really, there you go. Is that good for you?
It's a good idea. It's a good
Okay.
It's weird that they didn't wait for me to say that they could go.
idea.
They're really good things,
They're ready to take the
guys. No, thank you so much for coming. Okay, well, that's all the fun stuff. Let's move on to this. Now feels really bare.
How dare you?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, well, looks like you three in the back are gonna have to weigh in on stuff just so that we have input. All right, let's move on to current action items. The first is consider adopting a tentative municipal budget for fiscal year 2025. You gonna go through that, Scott or Ellen?
I can run through this. What you're looking at here, there aren't a lot of changes after the last several department head proposals. We're trimming at the budget right now is really what we're doing in an attempt to get it down to, let me get over there, sorry. So looking at the balance sheet, we're trying to get this number down 178. I think I actually have another iteration that we've done today that's down to about 151. 151,000 over budget, meaning it's still not balancing at this point. But we're getting closer, whittling it down from about 300,000. Normally around this time of year, it starts out at 700,000. We whittle it down to 300,000 over. So hats off to the department heads for providing budgets that are within reason. The ability to whittle it down. So we're about, around 151 right now. The state mandate is that cities adopt a tentative budget on the first meeting in May. I think we're one of the only cities that actually does this. Because
Oh, sorry.
when we hit June, that's when the budget hearings, when we go over everything in detail, any hearing associated with this current year's budget and the next proposed city budget, that's when it would be approved formally and adopted. And so just so you know, this is complying with that state code and that state mandate to have a tentative budget approval at this meeting.
So are you anticipating 151 best case scenario? Is that, do you
I
think that's all
think-
the squeeze there is?
No,
Not that it's not terrible, by the way. I'm just,
there's not much more.
okay.
But we'll go over that. That's a good question, because later on in the, I wish we'd already gone over all the other items later on in the agenda. We'll get to what's coming up. And what's coming up is, this is a great budget, great by the department heads. We whittle it down a little bit. We can probably whittle it down a little more. It gets to the point where you can't whittle it down much more. But then we have to make decisions. And those decisions are big ticket items about, can we bite off any more as far as the roads projects are concerned? Roads projects are general fund items unless they come out of impact fees, and those get very pricey. And so that's the decision point right there as to what we can bite off and what we'll be okay with at that point. This is fantastic at this point. It's very encouraging.
Yes.
It's still not balancing, but we'll go over that a little bit later in the meeting. I would point out right now all of the major changes, but they're all minor right now. There's no significant, like, we've dropped this project, we've dropped that. It's minor changes or reductions through each of the departments, and that's what we'll continue to do over the next month.
So Alan, there was the property tax overview poster in the folder too. Are you gonna talk through that?
That's
as-
an agenda item later on in the meeting.
Oh,
That's why I
okay.
said I wish we could do
Oh,
these in
okay.
succession.
I
but
gotcha.
These
Okay.
are actionable
Yep,
items. The
yep.
other items are discussion.
Yep, good point. Okay.
So for this purpose, I'll motion to adopt the tentative municipal budget for 2025.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second, I'll second.
Second by Joni. Is there any discussion on this?
No.
Okay, all in favor?
I,
I,
Any opposed? Okay, that is passed, and we're gonna need to do the same thing.
Okay.
Oh, we're gonna have to
reconvene.
convene as an RDA. So I would entertain a motion to convene as the RDA.
So moved. Oh,
Second.
Okay, motion by Buzzy, second by Emily, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are now the RDA. I would entertain a motion to adopt the tentative fiscal year 2025
Don't we have to
RDA.
adopt the agenda first?
agenda.
Oh, sorry.
I'll move we adopt the agenda,
Thank
the RDA meeting this
Second.
evening.
Okay, motion by Kenny, second by Buzzy, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then, do we need to discuss the RDA budget?
No major
Okay.
changes right now. And if we will have major changes throughout this year. And there might be some minor changes in the June meeting, but I will point those out if there are changes in that meeting.
Okay, then I would entertain a motion.
I move that we adopt we adopt the tentative fiscal year 2025 RDA budget.
Okay, motion by Emily,
Second.
second by Buzzy, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I would entertain a motion to leave the RDA and go into the LBA.
Don't we have to go back to city council first?
No.
No, okay, then so moved.
So motion to adjourn the RDA and convene the LBA. Okay, motion by Emily.
Second,
RDA.
Oh, that's what Emily was saying. Okay.
Okay.
So motion to
Adjourn.
adjourn the RDA, go back into city council.
second.
So motion by Emily, second by Kenny, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
So where Mark was
Okay,
just saying
so
sure.
now
Sure.
I would,
Motion to convene as the LBA.
okay, motion by Buzzy,
Second.
Second by Kenny. Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion, I'd entertain a motion to accept the agenda. Okay, motion by Buzzy, second by Emily, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Alan, do we have anything, do we need to discuss the LBA tentative?
No, LBA is still the exact same and it will remain the exact same for the June meeting.
Okay, enjoy these minutes, Marie.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, so I'd entertain a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2025 LBA budget. Kenny, you can just say.
Oh,
something.
yeah, I will move that we adopt the
Okay,
LBA budget.
motion by Kenny,
I'll second.
second by Joni, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion to adjourn the LBA by Emily, second by, I think, Kenny.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
See the problem, you guys. If
How about-
Too much of it, my last is a pain to
Did
read.
did that include the
Yeah.
motion to adjourn? Did that include and convene city council?
Yes,
Motion.
I thought that was assumed, but if it is not, I meant convene as the city council again.
We're gonna say that included a motion to convene. Okay, strong work, way to work together. I like that everyone participated. All right, we're moving on to consideration of a concept plan, preliminary plat and development plan approval for a single lot commercial subdivision on the southwest corner of 3100 North Main Street.
Okay, Alan, if you want to just go to exhibit, I think it's B. Kind of give you an aerial view. Go down
That-
just a couple more pages there.
Sorry.
There you go. Okay, so this is the concept plan. What we're looking at is a concept plan, a preliminary plat, and a development plan of this subdivision. It's a little bit unique. This is a project that the city is partnering with this owner on as an economic development opportunity. So we are facilitating this project through some engineering and some accelerated timelines on review. But what you'll see here is a fairly simple subdivision on that northwest corner of 3100 North in Maine. This parcel actually already existed. It was created through a meets and bounds description, just a quick claim deed. But before it can be issued a building permit, it has to go through our subdivision ordinance, which requires it to be platted, certain improvements to be installed. And so that's what we're looking at here today. Alan, if you want to go down just one more, this is kind of a high level development plan showing access coming off of 3100 North, infrastructure being provided through existing lines in 3100 North and also connecting over to Second West. So water, sewer are in that area. As far as roadway dedication, there's already enough roadway on 3100 North, so there's no anticipated dedication there. However, in working with UDOT on both this project and also on the Rush Funplex parcel just to the south here, they are requiring a 10-foot dedication on Main Street for both a decel lane and an XL lane. So for people to get into and out of traffic entering this block. So there'll be a little bit of dedication there and some improvements on Main Street. You kind of see in that hatched area where that will be accommodated. Zoning is commercial, so there's no minimum lot size or area or frontage requirements. The parcel's just a hair under an acre as it's shown there. So it meets the zoning for area and width. And we anticipate this project to accommodate a drive-through restaurant. There's no open space. There's no HOA, so there's no need for common ownership of any mutually maintained landscaping. Yeah, there is a requirement in the general plan for a sidewalk on the north side of the parcel adjacent to 3100 North. Now, if you look at the master plan for parks and trails, there is the separated path on the north side of 3100 North, and you'll see that further to the east as you head up towards the bench. So you'll see that piece of infrastructure come when the north side further develops. That's actually in the Hyde Park city boundary. So north of here, that then transfers the municipal boundary.
Sidewalk on the east side still too, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So with the frontage on, that's a good catch. So on Highway 91, there's the requirement for the meandering sidewalk and some other landscaping, trees, those types of things that we'll be verifying as well.
So when you say meandering, I was gonna ask about that. That's in the new code that it can't be a straight sidewalk, right? So the-
Correct. So it'll meander a little bit. There's a minimum 20-foot a landscaping portion on that frontage with Main Street. So there'll be that sidewalk within that 20 feet with some trees and bushes and a few things like that. Yep.
And Scott, the only access to that, to this first plat, this first lot is just on 3100. So all traffic will enter and exit off this one.
Correct. Yeah, there'll be more coordinated access into and out of this full block. There is limited access onto and off of Main Street. There will be one access point mid-block about where the cursor is. And that's a part of an access plan that was coordinated with UDOT and all the municipalities on Highway 91.
Can you turn left out of that? Can you go north?
In the
Yeah.
future,
Oh,
no.
sorry, Marie. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, so this will be an open access that where you can go both directions out of this. So UDOT's latest plans, they won't allow this, but because
Yeah.
we have a previous plan and because we're working with the sock factory right now, they've been great to work with, but we'll close down this access of theirs and actually have it come off of 2850 North. So they won't have the access coming off of Main Street. And then there'll be a mid-block access for everything from 2850 to 31 right there. And my understanding right now is it'll be left in, left out, right in, right out. I mean, it's not just gonna be very limited. I think what you're referring to is like the Costco access off of 10th
Yeah.
West, where you can only go one
Yeah.
direction.
Oh,
I think this is both directions because of the acceleration and deceleration lane that are built in there.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks, Alan.
yeah, but primary access to this lot will just be off of 31.
Okay.
Yep. Do you guys have any questions about kind of the premise, where the lot is, the improvements that will be required? Okay.
As always, Scott, your reports are very well written and thorough. I
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
that.
I did actually forget to put in the report, the recommendation from the planning commission. So the planning commission did review and provide a positive recommendation. So I did miss that. So that was reviewed last meeting.
We'll take off one gold star.
Was that unanimous from the planning commission?
It was.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay, if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But again, this is concept plan, preliminary plat, and the development plan.
There's also a development agreement associated with this because of some of the things that the city would provide
Yeah.
with this subdivision.
So do you need to include that too?
Mhm.
I'm ready to make a motion if
Okay.
anybody else has any more.
Go ahead,
concerns.
Emily.
Okay, I motion that we approve the concept plan, preliminary plat and development plan for a single lot commercial subdivision on the southwest corner of 3100 North Main Street.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Emily, second by Buzzy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Will they have a play place?
What was that?
Will they have a play place?
I don't know what you're referring to, but certain restaurants do really like to have a
I
play place.
just wondered if that was maybe in consideration for.
I think they don't do those anymore, actually, certain restaurants.
This
they
certain
still have-
restaurant really wants to put one in at this
But they
location.
still have meals, right?
Yeah.
Good one, Joni.
That
No,
was good, Joey.
You guys are super subtle.
what?
Okay. Let's move on to our work session items, the true fun part that everyone's missing, right, Alan?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, sorry. was
Actually,
there
yeah,
something?
I'm not joking. I actually think this is the more fun part.
It is nice because you discuss and it doesn't have necessarily the same pressure. So
What's wrong with
let's get into budgetary trends.
you?
This is, I think, Alan, in response to Mark's questions about just general budgetary trends. So hopefully Mark can listen to this later on.
And I think we'll probably discuss this another time, if it's okay with the city council, not just once, but this is an important item that we'll probably need to discuss multiple times. Yeah, Mark brought up some valid points, regarding what are the trends within our budget? Where are all the general fund monies going? You'll notice that certain departments that are enterprise funds are not included in this. That's because enterprise funds are supposed to basically take care of themselves. They don't have a demand on the general fund normally. And they don't in North Logan City. They used to in some departments, but they don't anymore. The general fund, and looking through this though, you'll see kind of trends. And the trends are basically what departments have kind of increased over time. And a lot of the departments have increased over time. And I'll go over here to the actual overview. And I just put simple notes in there. these are things that we already know about. We've had to make major changes over the several years with fire and police. Basically, they were underfunded at one time, and then now we've made changes. We've combined with Logan for fire, police. We basically invested a lot more in police at the time. They were underfunded. But those are the biggest increases over the last few years, last 5 years. So you'll see that large increase, and we'll go over that a little bit later as to those specific increases. Other departments will probably trend down in their demand on the general fund. Those two are building inspection and cemetery. Our building inspection department used to have a demand of roughly 300,000 to 400,000 on the general fund. And now it doesn't have a demand on the general fund. Cemetery, similarly, after we put in the pump that provides secondary water, our biggest expense for the cemetery was culinary water in the tune of $20,000 to $30,000 a year. And now that price will probably be around a few $100s a year. Elections, I mean, that's small peanuts compared to all these other departments, but in percentage increase is off the charts. So really nothing as far as the cost goes, but significant if you consider that because of state mandates, it's gone from $2,000 a year 2 years ago. Sorry, to $23,000 a year minimum is what we're spending on elections. And so, again, take that for what it's worth.
I don't even see elections on the charts.
It doesn't show up because it's such a small,
Oh,
tiny,
okay. Gotcha.
but as you look at that, yeah, it's jumped. I mean, $2,000 to $23,000 because of the state mandate to have just mail-in ballots only. Beforehand, we used to have election judges, we'd have precincts, we'd come to vote in person. Now that's no longer an option because of the state legislature.
Is it okay to ask like who that decision maker was?
The state
The
legislature.
legislature as a whole.
Yeah. 'Cause they want,
Name?
I don't know if
Well,
it's
I
on
mean,
the
you
bill.
could look at who voted yes on that, but.
I think it's bipartisan too.
yeah, because mail-in
Pretty
ballots,
much
you
every
actually get
legislator
more
voted
people
yes
to
on it,
vote.
yeah.
Does
think
that
it's-
actually exist in the state legislature?
I think it's one of those
Bipartisan?
unintended consequences where they
That's
vote
what
on
it's
something
on.
because it sounds nice and they don't realize how horribly damaging it could be to several communities, their budgets, regarding that.
What would it take, I'm sorry, this is not in my wheelhouse for this part, but what would it take to overturn that once they see the significant, I mean, that's.
It's been going for
$20,000.
like at least
Yeah.
3 years.
They would have to see, and maybe the bigger issue that you're gonna run into though, is the voter turnout is so much higher now that I think for the state, at least, they would see it as a net positive. That yes, it costs more, but voter turnout is better.
Jumping down through here, economic development, that has a large increase because it basically didn't exist a few years ago. It was just a few staff members that were trying to take care of it on the side. But now we actually have a department, so that increase, in demand on the general fund. Now it's indirectly offset through revenue that's brought in. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the meeting, why that's important. Court, it's kind of a different number. Some of the numbers were off. We averaged between 80 and 120,000 for demand on the general fund. Parks and Rec numbers, they've kind of just stayed about the same. It's tough to say what is the demand on the general fund. If we don't exclude like impact fees and RAPS projects, because obviously if we were just taking, in the past, this is the error that's come up. Citizens will take the parks budget and say, look, they had a massive increase in that year because they see the total expenditure that came out. That's why it's so important that we focus on demand on the general fund. Because what they may not realize is there's a $300,000 project that occurred in parks, but it was fully funded through through the RAPS. And so there was no general fund demand at that point. That's something that we really need to make clear in these budget. And so, but they have increased. Parks and Rec have increased the last few years, but not significantly. But it's something we need to keep our eye on. Parks, Rec, streets, those are kind of some of the other big players in the general fund budget.
So just to clarify, the numbers in the trends chart, are they demand on the general budget or on general fund or total expense?
Their demand on the general fund. not
So-
total expense.
So even then, it still looks like there's, from one year to the next, there's a several $100,000 swing.
They do jump around. If we're
Okay.
purchasing some capital equipment and other things, we'll have to
Okay.
purchase mowers that can go up $50,000, and then the next year we don't. That's the kind of bouncing around.
Gotcha.
One thing to point out though, I hate to be so blunt about this. Here's just a general stat. North Logan has the highest amount of parkland per capita in the state. We have double the parkland of several other cities in the valley. Their parks budgets are higher than North Logan's, the ones that have half the parkland. And I won't specify who, but that is just a simple stat, that their parks budgets are higher than ours, even though we have double the amount of parkland. So hats off to the Parks Department. The Rec Department is in a similar boat, where we're double the next highest city in demand, yet some other budgets are 4 to 5 times our budget.
Well, and Ellen, I think you need to also point out where you got that information. This isn't our estimation of what their budgets are. It's actually a survey that all the municipalities participated in, at least for recreation.
Yeah.
Where everyone self-reported their numbers, and so probably it's the most I guess conservative number probably that they have, and even with those, we're still really, really efficient.
Our double the next highest recreation, we don't even have a rec center. Our numbers are double the next highest city in participation. Keep in mind, that does not include the HSC, which we manage, which has 34,000 people per month. So you add that on and we're like the highest in the state. Like that is how high the participation numbers are in North Logan. Ironically, the higher the amount of participation, our costs really don't increase because people pay for themselves and it helps fund the
Self-sustaining,
programs.
yeah.
It's pretty self-sustaining. Now we've had to have increases here and there just to help fund the department. But the same token, it's an emphasis to see how self-sustaining we can be in each of these departments. So hats off to them. That's incredible. Streets are in a similar boat. They do more chip seal than any other city, yet their budget is less than cities with not a fraction of the roads of North Logan. So
And it's an investment in our future, right? Like, I think it was so helpful for us to be streets employees for a day. Kenny, was that before your time?
It was before.
It
my
would be
time. I'd
so
like to
great to
again,
do
though.
that again.
Yeah,
And
We
we
just
think we
learned
could
a
regularly
ton.
do that. Yeah.
once
that
a
would
year.
remind me.
ready to go.
Emily can look out for the streets employees.
Okay, okay.
She's the best mom
Don't
out there.
Put the 12-year-old on it, okay?
That was fun.
Which helped. I think they were a little bit toned down, the individuals, as they go by what we call a flagger or a traffic controller. But Colby does a fantastic job of explaining why. Why are they doing the surface treatments? Why is it so important? What are the factors that go into different types of surface treatments? Which is just fantastic. He's a wealth of knowledge. in
He
that
gets
area.
really technical really fast,
Yeah.
like with the lingo, but I think it's helpful. And I think it's also, we also have an example of what the alternative is, which is to just fully redo roads as they come up. And I think we've seen that in other communities, and we have in the past been that way. And
No, thank you.
I'm just relieved that we're
More
not digging
proactive.
ourselves a hole for the
No.
future.
Because that's, I mean.
So when I started as
up
public
there.
works director, we redid probably 3 or 4 roads the first 2 years, and it's a massive expense. Like the city budget was literally just going to those road projects to redo those roads. And you're not just redoing the roads, you're redoing curb, and then in some areas sidewalk, and you have to go back in everyone's front yards and restore their irrigation systems. I mean, it's a massive undertaking. And the project list at that time was about 10 to 15 roads that needed to be completely redone. It ripped out, grind and relay, whatever you want to call it. And now Colby's whittled that down to, I think there's like 1, maybe 2 roads in the entire city that need that type of level of replacement, simply by going very heavy on the surface treatment aspect, which is a few thousand, well, $100,000 here or there to really beef up those chip seals, as opposed to 200 to 300 to rip out just a small subdivision and redo.
I
those
love it.
roads.
Just it's easier on the residents, and I love that it's proactive
Yeah,
instead of the major. So yeah, so I don't even think people notice as much anymore. in this city.
And the type of surface treatments that he does, Colby works with a lot of other entities that work with the county. They'll find the cheapest way to do a chip seal. He's narrowed down the types of surface treatments that have the highest return and the longest value. So other cities around us, they'll do ones that are a little bit, I call them better looking. Like if you go into a subdivision and they do what's called an HA5, that's the type of surface treatment that just makes the road look pristine. Comes in and it's like putting black lipstick on a road. It looks very shiny and new. But the life on it isn't anywhere near the life of a chip seal. And so Colby going through that, he looks at it objectively. And that's what's really saved our bacon. I can't tell you how amazing that is. I used to report on that in each city council, the 10 roads that we were looking at. And now to not even have it as a reporting item is incredible. That's because of him and what he's been doing. So going through this, yes, there's trends. We need to watch each of those different trends and what we're looking at.
Okay.
But those are kind of the general fund trends. We'll go over a few more of these when we go over property taxes and a few other things in this meeting. Are there any other questions just about general trends? Anything you
Just want to thank you for the graph.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. I told Alan, I really do like graphs, so.
I guess my question would be, like you say that, like, I totally understand fire and police are the big trend increases, and I understand why that is the way it is. But I guess I'm wondering from the city's perspective, do we have our arms around that at this point, or is that just a trend that we can just anticipate in the future, or will it plateau at some point?
Great question. If we jump over to the budget, the fire department trend is set. The reason we say that is because, so when we had our own department as a volunteer department, not the same type of department, meaning had a few full-timers and then the rest were volunteers. It's a different level of service, where the response times are a little bit slower. We didn't have paramedics. We didn't have an ambulance on staff. So we're from around $400,000 that was our total out-of-pocket expense for fire during that time. But this is basically set out per the agreement. So each year it goes up a certain amount, and that's specified. So nothing really alarming. Year 7, there's a big jump because we have to add one more employee, but they're pretty much set. And so it's not exponential anymore, the increase. It's high. Northland pays, if not the highest per capita for fire in the state of Utah. But we also have one of the fastest response times. So we have nearly an ISO rating 1, which is the highest rating you can have for a fire and EMS department. So to answer that question, I hope I answered it. It increased dramatically over 2 or 3 years. And now it just increases at a kind of a linear rate, not exponential. And then police increased, theirs went from around 800,000. Now it's up to 2.1 million, from 890,000 about 7 or 8 years ago. There's initial massive jumps because Northland had fallen behind. And then about 3 years ago, there were more massive jumps because I'll just be honest, everyone was in an arms race. Everyone was giving massive raises to public safety, to police officers, and everyone was in this battle to bring police officers up. And now those basically ended up causing massive increases to the police department. We don't see massive increases anymore, but
I mean, I would say the arms races are still going on.
They're-
Like it's really
yeah.
hard.
What percentage do you think that is, the increase?
Well, to go
What
from
percentage from-
895 to 2.1.
But what do you see what will happen like the next couple of years?
The last 2 years with Chief Goodrich in there, it's only been 5 to 7% increases,
Yeah,
which
Chief
is
Goodrich
very
has,
reassuring.
Yeah.
Chief Goodrich has had an entirely different approach than some of our past chiefs where they would kind of ask for the moon and hope to, I mean, I think before Chief Goodrich, they asked for 35% increase initially. And then like we walked that back significantly, but I think we're on a much better path now that like where they're actually asking, like we battle it out. I think Buzzy and Kenny can both attest to this. Like we had an extra meeting in police commission. And the great thing about the police department is that we have 3 members on that department. I mean, on that board that,
James doesn't touch it.
no, oh, sorry, we do, we have,
Awesome.
we also have a citizen and well, we have James and Lloyd Berenson. So we actually have 5 representatives from North Logan on that commission. And that, I mean, we looked at it at every angle to try and make sure that we're being good stewards of our money. But it's hard. I mean, it's expensive and, you know, they're just it's just expensive to have your own police department. It just is. That is the bottom line. So, and thus far, that seems to be, you know, like in what, 2016, when they were really facing that decision of whether to keep the MPPD, that was a resounding response from the citizens that, you know, that we do that. So that's, at least it feels like that's been a priority of North Logan's to keep that. But there are just some things that are outside of our control, you know, cost wise. So.
Question, though. Yeah.
And then Kenny, I was also just gonna tell you that when I very first started as mayor, that was that even before? Cause I remember working with Bruce, Lee. No, on all across the board on employee salaries. It might have been just in the few months, like the month or 2 before I took office.
We had a compensation committee.
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
Had to put together because we had fallen behind in every department.
So that was a
Oh,
big
that's-
adjustment. Yeah, you were Buzzy, but that was a big adjustment period that we're making an effort to not get to that point ever, you know, like we're paying far less than everyone else. So I don't anticipate that growing exponentially, but I mean, everything like just inflation is killing all of us. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that
Yeah, thank
into
you.
just generally with employee salaries. So. Any other questions on budgetary trends? It's really interesting, I think, and I think it's one of our most important jobs. I just to skip ahead a little bit when when I was at the league, they were saying, you know, really the budget is a policy document. And so if you look at where we spend our money, that's what tells you what's important to us. And so that is our job, is to say, look, does this reflect truly what our priorities are? So anyway, it's a really good discussion. I think we should continue with them. Okay.
Mayor,
let's-
can I?
Oh, yeah,
can I
go
ask
ahead.
with the budgetary trends, so Alana, maybe this is the time where I can ask, the property tax overview poster that's in item 2.
Let's move on to that agenda item. Does that work?
Oh, is that?
It's just
am
next.
I
Let's
still?
discuss property
Okay,
tax.
it was just in item 2, so that's why I was. Yeah, that's
Like, get me
I
there.
just, I saw in item 2, so that's why I thought, we're past item 2, shouldn't we be talking about that? Okay, I'm sorry.
So Alan, do you want to just give us an overview of that agenda item?
How much depth do you want me to go into on this?
So
It's
I
a-
guess, if I may, I'll just kind of give you a general sense of what we need to get a temperature from the council on. Every year we have the option of raising property taxes. That's a pretty complicated process. We have 3 hearings?
2 formal hearings and 3 meetings.
Okay, so, you know, we have to know in advance. I believe we had to have said, is there any chance that we're going to months ago? And so we've preserved that ability to do it. The thing that, you know, we've tried to educate people every year on this, but the thing that I think most people don't understand about property taxes in Utah is that if you do nothing, our rate decreases every single year. And so while it seems like, you know, it's such an arduous process to raise taxes, but every mayor that I've spoken with says what ideally would happen is that you do that incrementally. There've been other jurisdictions, like even year to year. I think that would be really hard to do, because we're not really accustomed to it, but there have been jurisdictions that fail to do that, and they've had 50% increases on back-to-back years. So that's the path that you don't want to back yourself into. But every year the tax commission adjusts our rate down so that we collect the same amount of taxes. So if,
Truth in taxation.
Mhm. Exactly.
well, yes, yes. Truth in taxation more applies to the process that by which you have to go through to raise taxes. But yes, the state law says they adjust the amount collected down every year so that your rate goes down. Even as your property, like even as the amount collected stays the same.
So essentially what it is every year, the Cache County Assessor's Office does what is it called? A statistical increase is what they do every year. So every year, properties increase slightly in value. Normally, I mean, they can decrease, but we've never seen that. They'll increase, and then they also decrease by that same rate so that property owners generally pay about the same amount every year. Now, there's other contributing factors, and that's businesses and they're taxed a slightly different way. They're taxed on 100% of the value of their business, and they usually receive some type of break or benefit from the county assessor, and that goes back onto the backs of some of the residents, which then essentially would be a slight increase. That was alarming a few years ago. We don't anticipate seeing that in any major form in the next couple of years, obviously because property values aren't skyrocketing like they were in the past. But you keep that in mind where the values increase, the rate decreases, you pay about the same to compensate. Other cities in the valley have just basically adopted a policy of saying, we're just going to hold the rate. And hold the rate basically means whatever the rate was last year, they're going to keep in this year. I don't think they fully understand that.
They
That's
absolutely don't understand it.
that's an
Because they don't hold the
25%
corresponding
increase.
hearings.
Like
And then
literally,
last year-
it can be a 25% increase in 1 year, and they just say, we're only holding the rate. I was like, North Logan's never done a hold the rate increase, like that high of an increase. We've never even said hold the rate. It's always a percentage and an exact amount. But as the mayor pointed out, the state tax commission, the Utah League, even the county, everyone that we've worked with in the past, say it's much better to do smaller inflationary increases if you need them to keep up, because the last thing you ever want to do is do what certain cities in the valley have done, where they've done back-to-back 50% increases. So 100% increase over 2 years in your property taxes. To put that in perspective, that would be the equivalent of the average home in North Logan City, their property taxes, the North Logan City portion. Keep in mind the entire portion, the vast majority goes to the school district and to the county and the other entities. But the 13% that goes to the city. So on the average home, that's around $300. To do a 50 and 50% increase, essentially you'd take that $300 and you'd say North Logan's portion is now $600. And that's what another city in the valley did. That's what you never want to do. That's too much burden for people on fixed incomes or for just people in general, with all the inflation taking place right now. And so, if you go through here, there's a list of what North Logan's done in the past. It goes year by year, and it's about every 2 years or every year, there's a small incremental increase in property taxes for the past 10 years or 8 years. That's been the case. It'll be about 1 year on, 2 years off, or every other year there's an increase. That's basically what's happened. Those increases have been 2%, 5%, 9.9% increase, but surprisingly that year was only $18 with a 9.9. No increase, 4.9% increase. That's what you're looking at. So it's very low as far as it's basically inflationary is what you're seeing every year or every other year in that case. But as you look through this, sorry, this is a lengthy policy and I completely cut off the mayor.
No, I had said what I was going to say.
As you get down through here, when you get to this, you have to look at this chart is amazing. Scott puts this together every year. Let me see if I can make that bigger. So as you look at this chart is probably the easiest thing to recognize. And if you're looking at the average home, this is set by the state, by the county assessor's office, I believe, or the state tax commission. The average home value is $590,000 in North Logan City. Just seems off the charts, but that is the average home value. And as you go down through here, if we were to impose, if the city were to increase that by 5%,
You'd
this
have
is the, this is the
pitchforks.
great number.
No, that's
Nine
fine,
or
actually.
$18
A
is
year.
what that would increase on North Logan City's, sorry, the portion that's allocated to North Logan City, which would then result in 500 or 55,000 coming to the city extra.
Yeah. I think
Um, So as you look through that, that's essentially, it's easy to see that for the average home, what is the percent increase? How would that affect the average homeowner? Less than $2 per month is essentially what it would be.
Yeah, I just some comments here real quick, because Joni and I are kind of talking on the side. I get relieved when we're considering inflationary tax increases, believe it or not, because what I've learned from my time here is the way other cities do this are not open and transparent, and we are. And when you don't do inflationary, you don't consider it, at some point, we end up sacrificing something way too significant for the city. And then we pay for it anyway, 5, 8 years later on a much more significant increase. That's much harder for people to feel. So if we're talking $18 a year on the average home this year, for cities that don't operate like we do, that jumps to be 70 or 80 a year in 5 or 6 years. And it's a lot harder for that message for homeowners, in my opinion, or anybody that has to look at their annual budget. So it's nice to see. It felt like, because I think we've got how many years now without doing
Just a
inflationary,
couple.
2 years without.
which is about the maximum I felt like in my
Yeah.
time. Like anytime we get past 2,
Especially with
starting to get-
inflation, the
yeah,
last 2 years,
right.
it's been a lot more than 5% inflation.
So, and where do
We
you
could
feel
go
on
with some
this,
cities
Kenny?
do.
I'm curious.
Well, I'm in Buzzy's boat. I think inflationary increases are wise. I will say, I was, in this last election cycle, in the process of talking to a lot of North Logan residents, I was enlightened to the sensitivity that we should have to how many people in the city are really like a 20% increase per year might not sound like a lot to us, but to some people that really, like, they're on that hairy edge right now of being able to make it and not, and any slight increase might push them over that edge. So I guess I talked to enough people that had that were in that situation that it sensitized me a little bit
Yeah.
to that fact that here in North Logan, there are people that are just, every cent in their budget is already accounted for. So any even slight increase, they'll have to make some tough decisions. And but I agree with you, Buzzy. Inflation is what it is, and we can't just pretend like it doesn't exist.
Kenny, kind of one thing that's interesting too is last time we did this, there actually surprisingly we have had very little negative feedback in probably the 3 times we've raised it, 2 or 3 since I've been on the council. But a couple people, well, the message I love to share is, yeah, I mean, at least let me ask you this: 67% goes to the school district. Can you see where that's all being spent? Probably not. 17% goes to the county. Can you see where all that's being spent? Probably not, though we do get some benefits in the county. In North Logan City, every dollar you're giving to the city is fully transparent, and you can see the books and you can see exactly where every dollar is spent. And when people hear that, and I'm like, and it's only 13% of your overall tax burden, they're generally like, yeah, that's a good point. Like, I can see my roads being done. I can see the parks are in great shape. I can see the new pickleball courts, even though some of that stuff wasn't funded through taxes. But it's kind of eye-opening to residents when they realize that that increase actually is transparent and they can see where those expenses are going. It's the others that raise that you're like, where's that all going?
And bring that.
Yeah.
And I am really tight on budget, and it's frustrating to be a citizen as well as a North Logan City employee. I mean, the perception that we are increasing this.
Yeah.
It's saying us, that's what we're. And yet, it's like, I have nothing to do with it, and it's extremely frustrating. I mean, very little. It's very frustrating because it's really hurting us that our taxes have doubled that way. The school district doesn't do a chunk of it. I don't know if we need to get that out there more, or, what.
So
I will
So
say
to
though,
answer
people
that-
want to get mad about this. This is an easy one to feel mad at, if that makes sense. And so in my mind, I'm like, knowing that people want to get mad about my taxes and being able to say, well, we don't control the prices for a lot of things that go up.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know.
but it's a key point that Marie brought up regarding the school district at 67%, 68.
73?
67%. So then you've got that percentage, and then you've got the county at 17%. If they increase their taxes, especially the school district by 1%, 2%, it is way more than us at a 5, 6, 7%. I mean, we could do the math here, but it is very high. And that's what Marie has just described, where where the county has increased significantly and the school district has also significant in small, tiny percentages, but it really does burden the average individual in their home significantly. And so going through that, the two things that we want to point out that are very clear. If a property tax increase does happen, like Buzzy brought up, if you go through and you say, where are these property taxes going? That's been one of the major questions. So 7 or 8 years ago, when we had our first property tax kind of increase and we looked at this, people say, well, where is it going? We already just went over this because the questions Kenny brought up, fire and EMS. So we've gone from $490,000 a year to 1.085, almost 1.1 in the budget. Police, we've gone from $850,000 a year to $2.1 million per year. If we raise taxes, we will bring in $50,000 more per year. I just basically went over, I mean, a $2 million increase in our demand on the general fund during those 7 or 8 years. The other one is streets, and that is in the past, it hasn't been streets, but this year we've got a question mark. We've got all of these projects that have massive grants that are coming through that are paying for the vast majority, but we still have a portion of that we have to pay. And so by doing these smaller incremental increases, will we be able to pay for all these? No. But at least we can get closer and we can start biting off, and we'll never have to do those massive, large increases if we can do this incrementally, as the mayor described as well. Where these will not be used. We need to be very clear about this, as Marie and the mayor both brought up. This is not to cover new city buildings. This is not to cover the community center, city office. This is not to be used for garbage. So other cities have used their general fund to subsidize garbage. We are
We
not.
can name names later.
I got in trouble for
But
doing that.
the other departments, you have to look at this though. There's an alarming trend though, where the other departments we went over with the general fund, they have not really experienced increases. We looked at increasing their budget, or sorry, their pay to bring them up. So they weren't half of other cities or 3/4 of other cities. Now they're just a little bit below, I would say, where they need to be. But those are the things that are alarming that we need to look into, but that's not where these property taxes would go. This increase would not go to those. To answer the other question that both Marie and Kenny brought up, now if you go down this chart, this is kind of a little bit confusing. But if you grasp that North Logan is 100%, then you look at the other cities. Look at the column on the right. That's your general operating property tax. And you look at all the numbers as you go down the right. There are several that are way over 100%. That is the percent of North Logan City. So we're at 100%. There are several that are 200%. Their rate is more than double our rate in North Logan City, simply because they've been holding the rate several years and not realizing that that is massive. That is a massive increase in those cities. So you look at North Logan City, and to Kenny's point, as he goes around door to door, it's really tough to explain that to any resident. I mean, it takes years to even try and wrap your head around this, and I still struggle some years just trying to wrap my head around why is that specifically going in that direction. But the general trend is that North Logan City is well below average in our property tax rate, the item that you have control over, and we always want to be that way. That would be a major goal in my mind of North Logan City, is to always be below average in our property tax rate. It's just very encouraging to the citizens to know that you are a very good steward over taxpayer dollars if you're below average in property taxes.
And I will say, way to go on that one. It's just, we're more expensive to live here. So that's the thing I get hit with the hardest. The alarming thing for me, what I learned yesterday, is that just a couple of years ago when I started helping Matt Whitaker down at the food pantry, it was 300 meals per month. It's now 800 per month. And we're getting middle-class families coming in now. So as Marie just said, you know, things have doubled, but people's salaries haven't. I mean, our city employees haven't. But when you look at that, that's alarming.
Yeah.
That we're seeing that many more in their middle. And they do a good job of, you know, vetting people. So this is like there's a huge need where we're getting so expensive here in Utah.
It is. With the inflationary items, it's very difficult right now. Everything just keeps climbing.
Mm.
One thing though that we have control over. So the city council has control over this. This is one of your purviews as a city council, being over the budget. And as you go down through these items, the reason that North Logan City has been able to stay so low, there's several factors in that. One, a general consensus from the city council to always stay low. That is the driving factor behind it, but how? One of the items is economic development. And the reason I said I'd bring this up later is you talk about a $50,000 increase to our budget by increasing it 5%. One business brings in $50,000 into the city in their property taxes and their sales tax. And so even a smaller business will bring in excess of $50,000. And so that's why I'm stressing that economic development is so important to North Logan City, because that's the number one way to keep us from having to increase property taxes.
Yeah.
And so I hate to overly stress this, but that's why it's so key to bring in those businesses, however it's done, to bring in businesses that and diversify our portfolio of businesses across the board. I mean, we have a giant big box in our community that brings in the vast majority of our sales tax, but it's less than half now. When I first started, it was basically, I'd say, over half of our sales tax came from one entity, and now it's less than half. Not that business hasn't continued to increase and climb, but we have other businesses now, a lot of other businesses and diversified businesses across the board.
I
And so
thought, based on the numbers you sent out, Scott, it looked like it was significantly less than half, like
yes,
less than 20%.
less than 20%. And when I started as city administrator, it was about half.
Okay.
What is
So-
tourism? What about tourism? Is that one we want to tap into?
What was that?
Tourism?
Tourism brings in direct and indirect dollars. So if you're looking at tourism, your direct dollars come in through usage of, transient room tax, sales tax, and the usage of restaurants and other things. If you're looking at that.
But
Uh,
that's like trickled down, right? Because
that's
like the
trickled down.
restaurant tax is, like, we get a fraction of what, and that's based on like applications to RAPs. So it's
Yeah.
just not there's no guarantee, I guess.
There's no guarantee in tourism in a city of our size without a key feature or other things. Even in other cities, it's not going to bring in as much as just general sales tax businesses. So that is going to be our North Logan's bread and butter over time. The other things looking through here, the reason that North Logan, these are just factors as to why North Logan has remained so low. I added up the numbers and I was shocked. The grants we have received or will receive, that all the departments have worked on, the mayor has worked on, the city council have been instrumental in this. Grants, we have over $12 million in grants in the last 7 years.
Wow.
That is the highest in cash value by far. Nothing is even close to that. And then we'll jump to the next line, and no one can even get in the solar system of this. Donations at 11.4 million over the last 7 years.
I'm curious what that is even in the last two.
Well, a lot of that is the last 2 years. So really the bulk of that coming in, but you look at those donations and you're just like, holy cow,
Yeah.
that is fantastic. That is the reason we don't have to raise property taxes to build a building, which 2 other cities in the valley have done. Anyway, jumping down through here, performing in-house work, we already went over this. Parks, rec, streets, those other departments that depend on the general fund. They're extremely efficient. That's why we don't have massive increases there. That's why that stays low. Collaborative efforts with other cities, we've done that. And then innovative ways. I mean, that's just anything we can do to save money. But that has really kept things low. So sorry, that's just an overarching toot our horn, talk about the department heads, how they've kept everything low. The mayor, the city council for bringing in massive amounts of grants and donations. I mean, economic development, all of these factors have kept us so extremely, I would say extremely low in our general property tax, and then our general plus property still below average in that.
Yeah, and Alan, I think it's really interesting to me as we look at this, the amount that it actually brings into North Logan to raise taxes, 7.5%, I think was one of the proposed. I mean, it's
83,000 on the average.
yeah, so that's not the way, like, if we were trying to really, what's the term for that? If we were trying to really like throw money at ourselves it's not like property tax increases are not the way to do that at all.
Yeah, your return on investment. So if we're trying to. look
Line
at
our
ways-
coffers is what I was trying to think.
Line
of.
our coffers. If we're trying to do that, property
Throw money
taxes
at
are not the way,
yourself.
but you have to do that because every year, this is the average home. So other homes will pay significantly more, but businesses will pay more as well, across the board. So everything helps across there. But again, those other factors are much larger factors in how we are sustainable.
Yeah.
So can I pull on one thread here? Buzzy, you mentioned that, you know, at least we're transparent in our budgets, and the county and the school district may not be, but I guess I had assumed that we're transparent because, not only because that's the right thing to do, but because we're required to be transparent in how we use tax money. And I had assumed that maybe the school district and the county. would
just
be on
say-
the
I
same
would say they're
requirements.
sorry, and I probably misquoted that. I think they're transparent, it's just harder to see.
That's what I was gonna
It's so
say.
big that it's hard to dial in on where everything's going. On a city budget, it's a lot easier to see it because it's just a smaller scale.
Okay.
So people that want to put in
Okay.
the time and effort, it's easier to see. It's
The-
really visually.
I'll give you an example that Buzzy's bringing up. The school district has a massive budget, and it's really hard because I'm not in a school district function to really go through and weed
Yeah.
out where everything's going. It's a different animal altogether, and it's massive. They don't have a lot of other funding sources besides the state and property taxes. But then you look at another city, and if we go through another city and we try to compare apples to apples, it is very difficult unless their budget is set up in the clear fashion that we really tried to emphasize. The year that we had 19 budget findings, the goal next year was how extremely transparent, open, and clear can we be? How can we simplify everything across the board? And that's why we went very clear, very simple, try to keep everything in line. We don't have a lot of years back and forward. That's what we used to have. We used to have like 5 years back, 5 years projected forward, which is great in trying to project things. It just led to errors. It just led to things that were where you couldn't track things, you couldn't figure them out. But as I've tried to compare, let's just say parks from city to city to city, it's alarming how little data I can get by going through budgets and trying to figure out where is money spent in those other cities.
Okay.
It's all open, it's there, but you've got to dig
Gotta
through
dig.
it. to
And I
find
would
it.
say
That's
like perhaps the big, like an easy representation of that is that there's even a level, like a difference in transparency where meetings are concerned. So we don't have to live stream these. We don't have to keep them up on YouTube. There's no requirement about that. You have to notice them, of course, but that's something that we do just because I think, there's a general policy that we don't have anything to hide, and that the more eyes on us, the better, and that we welcome people, seeing what we're doing so that we're not just, meeting in a room and hoping that no one listens in. We're saying, look, it's on YouTube. You can jump on from the comfort of your own home. And so I would just say like, that's been, kudos to Alan and the staff, where it's just, I think that there's just been a general policy of saying, look, we're not trying to hide anything. I know that as we did the tax hearings 2 years ago, I deep dived on that through my social media. I showed people my tax bill and said, look, let's break this down because it's super complicated. So I think there's transparency that's required by law. And then there's transparency that is just kind of a policy. And I think that North Logan falls into the latter case, where it's saying, you know what, if we're doing things above board, then we should have no problem sharing that with people. So.
Yeah, it's just hard when they see that final number and they're like, what? So just hearing how you guys have stated what what you've shared tonight, I'm just going, that's helpful. That's really
Yeah.
helpful. So just little blurbs of that, just to remind people, this is a really great thing that I think North Logan has done to keep us where we're at. And we're
Yeah.
not gonna have to have a major, unless, we all leave and somebody has to start from scratch. I think what has been set up, people should be very happy with what I think has been, what's been reported. I like it.
Yeah. So do we need to get a sense from the council where they are on?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess that's my question is, using this chart, I think that's the easiest way to do it. Where do you guys land? And that can be 0 to hold the rate.
I think we should do an inflationary one at least.
I'm a 1%er.
I don't know, 2.5% seems pretty reasonable to me. I'd even be willing to go up to 5.
Alan must have left.
It's
That's,
hard though when you listen to someone like Marie. that
I
just,
don't,
you know?
but
It's not ours, that's.
I know.
I mean, superintendent last year salary.
Yeah.
Where's salary? I have 2 kids in the system I had over 6 years ago. And my property taxes were literally done what they were. When at 47%.
That's the easy, that's what you just said, Marie. Yeah. And where are we asking to put this money? Not to salaries. And by the way, we don't have an employee paid anywhere near that. Well, maybe the mayor, but
yeah,
I think that's the
Yeah.
story. That's kind of what I was getting at. Kenny, is where this funding goes is not to line people's pockets who earn a salary for a job they do, but to
Yeah.
actually provide police services and fire and the stuff they see every day. Costs. Yeah. Yeah.
And I will.
Yeah.
I will just throw out, since this video will be on YouTube forevermore, the mayor does not make that much.
Thank you
just to
for-
clarify. Yeah.
You know what? The best part is it's transparent.
I probably think that.
I make
Right, I-
$10,800 a year. Everyone should know.
I'm not
Yep.
against an increase. I want to be reasonable.
I lean
The-
towards 5, because I think that I think that, I mean, that is on average $1.50 a month increase. And I think that that's in the realm of reasonable. So
So-
I would just say that's where I'm leaning. is
2
5.
things to point out. Mayor and city council make the least per hour in the city of North Logan. That includes
should.
all of the residents. Right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but you do. Our work, you
Wage.
make the least amount. The second thing, just to point out while you're talking about what you want to go to, Scott pointed out a key factor, and it's really the max that you're looking at.
Yeah.
That's what you want to talk about when you get to the June 5th meeting, is what is the max you could ever go and feel comfortable. Because that's what you're setting at that point.
So I would say the max I would ever do would be 7.5. And then I think, but I doubt that that's what we do.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I am.
Yeah, I feel okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah, in the past, I've always looked at no more than $2 a month, which would align with 7.5. I'm with you though, Lindsay. If we can get to 5, ideally,
That feels better to
But-
me.
but we need to be realistic too. Like, I don't want to put us in a bind because we make a decision this year that hurts everybody in a year or two because we didn't do enough. But I think the dollar amount that's reflected by those two is somewhere in that range, is a sweet spot.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Jody and
I'm
Emily?
just like on the lower end, sorry.
Oh, yeah,
That's
that's right,
I
you would.
understand it. I see this, but I'm like, oh, so if 2.5 to 5 might be my max.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think 5 feels a lot better to me too. I don't
Okay.
know that I could say I would go higher, just,
This
I
is-
don't know.
I don't know. This just feels like great information though to have, cause like I feel more comfortable at 5, but I could see us needing the 7.5 if necessary. So but that is my absolute max. No way do I think we need to go.
Well, and I don't think I don't intend to go to 7.5.
No, neither do I.
I think 5 is probably the sweet spot. So I don't even know if we need to say 7.5 because I don't think the council would really.
Yeah.
We don't have to vote on anything tonight,
Yeah.
and we'll probably
Okay.
talk about it at the
We'll think
next
about it
meeting. We
more.
should, because as many meetings as we can to
Yeah.
openly discuss this before it comes before you and a public hearing for a decision. But if that's okay with you, just keep that in the back of your mind.
Okay.
Think about these things, think about what you think is reasonable and. just moving these
151K shortfall, right, is what we're forecasting.
Yeah, and I think we'll whittle that down.
Yeah.
I think we'll whittle that down.
Okay.
Can
All
I
right. Well,
just
thank
seek
you. I
clarif-
think that's super interesting. Go ahead, Kenny.
Sorry, just to make sure I understand, I know there are a lot of variables that go into the property tax overall, as we've been talking about, but I guess on your table on page 6, comparing the different municipalities here in the county, I was surprised, like I have a friend who lives in Logan City, for example, and our houses are pretty much equivalently priced, but he pays like 50% more in property tax than I pay. Same county, Logan City's less according to this table. So is that just the difference between Cache County School District and Logan City School District?
Logan School District is one, that's a major factor. There's also other things where they're associated with bonds. So if they have bonds in here, they're not included in that. that rate
Okay,
right there.
okay.
But there are dedicated taxes to those bonds as well. but the school district, I'm just guessing, would be the major factor there.
Hmm.
Because Logan School District had massive increases a few years ago to redo their high school and build a few elementary.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, anything else?
Double, is that, or 50% more?
Yeah,
That's a good story to tell.
yeah, right.
Okay,
So that's,
okay.
What do you want to move to North Logan?
Thank you, guys. Thank you for that discussion. I think that's really helpful to just kind of get some guidance from you guys about where we're leaning. All right, let's move on to more exciting things. Utah retirement system.
Rest, baby.
Okay, I'm gonna put on a fake smile as I go through this. This is one thing it's really tough. And I won't go over the details. It's extremely complex, but let's just say the pension contribution rate for what's called a tier 2 employee. That is everyone in the URS system. Before 2012, it was called the tier 1, and I don't even know when that started. But there was something before tier 1. But tier 1 was a different type of contribution, which is kind of remains in place. Tier 2 started in 2012. And a lot of our employees, probably 80 to 90%, are in this tier 2 hybrid system, contributory system. And basically there's a pension contribution rate that's been creeping up every year. And this key factor right here is the second paragraph. This year, the rate exceeded the contribution rate by 0.7%. And what the state URS is basically saying is that we now have to contribute 0.7% more on top if we want to even match what we're supposed to into that retirement system. But then the state passed a law this year that said you can only do that for public safety employees. That did not smell, feel, or seem right. I will just come right out and say it. Not that I don't think it wasn't right. Sorry, I think it's fantastic that they said that they could pick up public safety. That's a no-brainer. But then they should include every other type of industry throughout a city and services and employees. That said the cities can pick that up in their retirement to pick up the extra 0.7%. So not to be too complex through here and going through this, but if you jump over to this other chart in here, sorry, I won't leave this up on the board too far. Go over this green column if you can in your own time. That is basically the shortfall. And what the state's basically mandating is that the employees now pay that percentage or that much. And that's a dollar amount as you look through there. So let's just say the average employee looking down this list will need to pay $400 to $500 this year to meet their retirement demand. Mandated by the state, cannot be picked up by the city. So the cities have an option. And in meeting with the city managers in that conference 2 weeks ago or last week, and then the Utah League, they went over this a bit as well. I thought I was clever because I was just like, well, we'll play the game. I thought we were clever and we'd have to kind of beat around the bush, but everyone's doing the exact same thing. So down here, recommendations, the city could compensate the employees basically in salary. We can't pay for it through retirement like we normally do, but we might have to go and pay the employees that much more, the tier 2 hybrid employees that much more that we identified, and then they can then in turn pay their retirement with that out of their pocket.
Can it come directly out of their, can it be like one of those things where they're not having to make a payment on a separate thing? Like, can it come straight?
No, we'll pay them and they have to pay it at that time. Yeah, they'd have to pay taxes on the increase in salary. So the thing I'm going to go back. I jumped over a part. So Scott and everyone reached out to the URS and said, why is this happening? Because of these questions I asked 1, 2, and 3. The only thing positive about horribly high interest rates is that we as a city are making a killing on our public treasurer's investment fund. So the amount of cash that we have at the city, we invest into the PTIF. It's just a fancy way of saying we put it into a pool that the state treasurer manages, and it has a return on that investment every year from our cash. And hats off to Debbie and Scott in going through this Because when I started, our PTIF return was about $30,000 to $40,000 a year. It's now about $360,000 is what we bring in from our PTIF investment. My question to them, and I am not an economist or an investor by any means, is how in the heck is the Utah retirement system not swimming in money like Scrooge McDuck right now with money to spare for all of these employees in
Did they
tier
get an
2?
NFT? Like,
That's
is that what they did? Did they try to go for Bitcoin?
I don't know what happened
I heard
here.
it was Doge.
But literally, if you
Dogecoin.
just picked an industry, threw something at a dartboard,
what they
invested in
did.
Home Depot, you would have a massive return right now. I'm sorry, but it's very frustrating to me. And this is one thing that I think we'll get to later in the meeting where we're talking about things learned at the Utah League. I think we need to really press the state legislature on this because this is alarming. I think I was the grumpiest about this in the state, and I'm not even tier 2. I'm tier 1.
Would you say
Oh.
the most grumpy by
The most
far?
grumpy by far.
I mean, we can focus
I
on
was.
that or school posters that get hung.
Listen.
Are they saying this is a one-time problem or?
No,
Weird.
No.
no, this is,
Every
so
year.
that, you bring up a fantastic point. The state, when they got back to us from URS, they said this is because of that arms race that occurred and everyone's salaries were increasing faster than they were anticipating, which is a factor. But I'm just gonna argue, was that factor higher than the massive return on investment that we've been receiving the past few years? And I would say absolutely not, not even close to the huge return on investment. So, sorry, that is just my soapbox right now. Long story short, the city council though has to make a decision probably before June regarding this year, but then Kenny brings up the horrible aspect. We can probably figure out a way to at least make
Or you
it
have
so
to
it's
do
not
this
an
every year.
overly burdensome thing for the tier 2 hybrid employees this year, which is 80 to 90% of the full-time employees in North Logan. But that does not help every year going forward. We have to sit down with the state legislature and say, cap it, start at tier 3. Don't make these employees on tier 2 have to continue to figure out how to make up the difference.
Well, and especially because, okay, so we pay them more, but they're gonna get taxed with that money that we're paying them more that they all, so like, I feel like we're
Yeah.
just kind of in a really bad situation where
Mhm.
this
It's a
is-
losing battle.
It's just
Yeah.
and this is terrible for, like, this is how morale gets lost,
Mhm.
is dumb crap like this.
So the state requires employees to contribute to their retirement at some minimum level. Like, I guess, if the employee says, I'm okay with that money not going into my retirement fund, that is not an option.
That's not an option unless they switch the type of tier 2 or retirement that they're investing in.
Okay.
That's a great question, but up to this point, it was the city contributes that. They could match back in the day with their 401k or into the system to contribute to that. Or they could contribute a portion. But it's really just a tough situation. Scott's provided another option of the additional 1.99. So in North Logan, we did provide a 1.99% above what the state required in the past. So if you read through that, Scott provides an option. The only thing that's kind of tough is this would cut into that 1.99%. Either way though, these are both options that we have to look into as far as helping the employees that are on tier 2. 1 year and then getting with our state legislators this year and saying, no mas, like the state has to pay for this and they've got to make it up and they've got to figure out and get their act
They have the
together.
money to get a hockey team here. I think they can figure out how to fix those.
Yeah, that's my feeling is.
Yeah,
Right,
I think
that's my
it's just a
soapbox.
general policy of saying, look, as you hand down these massive amounts of legislation that you're so proud of, the volume of, like, at least pause and say, "Well, how does this impact?"
Quantity versus quality.
Oh my
right now
gosh,
at the
make a
state
phone call.
legislature.
I
To
wonder,
quote Governor Cox.
yeah, make a phone call and I wonder if half of them just, I can guarantee 90% of
Oh
them
my
aren't
God.
aware
Oh, I'm sure not.
of what's happening and the massive return that they should be getting in the URS, Utah Retirement System.
Okay.
So
This is good. I mean,
No alignment.
I don't like these options.
Oh.
This is
Well, that-
definitely
that
giving
was
me good
convention.
information
You
to
could
go to our
go, like, you said,
legislators to help us with this.
75% of
Because this
them
feels like a
GMO.
them problem.
That
And I,
convention's the biggest.
this could be an easy win in my mind is helping our public employees
We
get their
knew.
appropriate
We knew
retirement.
when it
So,
mentioned.
Yeah.
So do we need to do anything? I think
No, I'm
that,
bringing it to your attention because it will require some sort of compensation or discussion over the next 2 meetings, especially when the budget's approved, because we might have to put a little bump in each of the tier 2 hybrids. And then probably some of the other tier 2 employees that maybe aren't tier 2 hybrid, a similar contribution along those lines.
okay. Okay, I think we're supportive of what we need to do
Yeah.
to make it right. Okay, let's move on to lessons learned at the league. Ellen, how do you want to do this? Do you want to just go down the row?
It's really up to you, Mayor. Maybe we could just start, and have each of the individuals kind of go over their list, whoever's on here. Sorry.
Who starts it on your thing?
Emily's first.
All right, go Emily.
okay, it was a great session. Hardest pill to swallow though is they did make it very clear that it's harder than ever to kill a bill. And having experienced some constituents in North Logan reaching out with issues, I have an idea of something that I think could potentially help us. So one thing I noticed is we had an individual reach out with a concern on like a police safety thing, and we've been getting reports for fire and police for a while. So I took a second to just look over those nice reports they gave us and was able to give them some information to correct some assumptions. But because it was right in front of me and I didn't have to call anybody, it was so much easier to reach for that information rather than to just assume good information was coming to me from a constituent. And especially because, I mean, they talk about like anecdotes or what's passing legislation. If there's a way we could do like a state of the city and kind of just go over like what's happening and have that information just in people's back pockets. Because when it's there, I mean, maybe they won't use it. I can't guarantee everyone wants to, but I don't know, make it available for those who would look at it. So that was not,
And it's simplified, you know, because that's the thing, no one wants to read long. Everybody wants me to take my 3 pages down to 1 paragraph.
I agreed. And again, that's where beautiful graphs and charts
Yeah.
come in. They had a whole session just on the new bills for the state, and a lot of the bills do not apply to us as a city, though every once in a while they would mention that the density requirements that we could get, and a couple of them, we have that density that they were looking out for first home buyers. First time home buyers is what they called them. And they're looking into whether already built homes would qualify as part of that. So that's something to look into. And let's see, what else should we tell you about? Oh yeah, new home prices, first home price levels are $450,000.
That's statewide.
That is what they are putting as state. Yeah, this was me just like scribbling as fast as I can, because they just kept bringing up new bills or parts of bills that I wasn't really aware of, because I mean, it is so hard to follow the state legislature right now. There's just so many, I felt like that. They also had one that feels a little frustrating to me, because they're like, oh, we've got 300 million state funds that they're going to invest as deposits to lenders for qualified projects. And I was like, man, that 300 million specifically for people to like do infrastructure reforms. And I was like, wouldn't it be better if that money could be lent to cities to do infrastructure reforms or some way? But that was just me. And then the last one was mainly just a reminder for everyone, is that North Logan City throws some really good city events. I went to a workshop where they said really cool things like make sure the departments work together. And I was like, departments don't work together to pull off events. So that was just a really good reminder of like how great our city staff does to make such great events. And that's it. Joni, I think it's you.
Thanks, Emily. And Joni, you want to summarize yours?
Yeah, 2 paragraphs. Well, it's just right there.
You want me to read it like I do the resolutions?
Where-
Joni
Whereas.
says. But Joni, I love that you talked about, there's like a women's luncheon and the speaker was just phenomenal.
Were there men there?
There were some who I think went to the wrong
There was
spot.
one.
Do it at men's luncheon next time.
You're like, you mean the fishbowl.
And Emily will try to get in.
Joni, do you want to summarize yours or do you want me to?
You can go ahead. I like that.
Okay. Well, so the woman that spoke, she had gotten cancer, and so she talked about how like it just changed her entire view. Like she's like, eat the chocolate cake, like don't like harbor resentments that you'll regret or that don't really matter. And so I think for me that like it was kind of, I'm like, oh, how does this apply to city relationships versus like personal ones? Personal ones, it was true and had unfortunate timing for me with my family disputes. But anyway, I thought it was really she was really well spoken about some of the like personal things. And I think it's also a great reminder to just that we need to be civil and that we have kind of a higher standard of civility as city representatives.
Which is sometimes hard, but I do feel like she had a good point. Sorry, thank you for summarizing. I'm gonna try and keep me short. Cause I could go on. I felt like everything this year was amazing there, but I really, really liked that message because it makes it say, we all do things differently. We all have different temperaments, personalities, great things about each person. I'm sure if you look hard enough, you can find it even in the ones that are really hard for us currently. So I liked that. I thought that was really great.
Social media, don't mix personal and political social media content. Keep your personal. So I think in the past, I know they've said, just make sure you have both, like your city social media and then a personal one.
Oh, and I did say, don't miss city politics. I'm not, don't mix with city politics. Sorry.
Oh, you can't block anyone. Don't get in disputes. You have to allow people to comment.
I will say, Kenny, if you don't have a social media, I have not really had many negative comments on mine. It's mainly been some very nice people and a lot of bots, and that's okay.
Oh, yeah, I know, I don't
They
don't
don't say
do-
anything negative either, so it's fine.
I don't do social media because I'm worried about negative comments. I just think it's a waste of time.
Well, and if you don't do it enough, I don't post enough, and so nobody's following. So if you're not on there every day, then they kind of just taper off. So
Watch some funny Instagram
Yeah, my kids make sure to show me the funny ones, so they do the browsing for me.
I think that it's helpful. I think it's another way to reach our citizens. So that's kind of why I've done it, because otherwise, I mean, I don't particularly necessarily like, I always do a city council preview and people have said, can you also kind of summarize city council? So I've been doing that. And again, it's just kind of like erring on the side of transparency, but
I just piggyback on you guys.
yeah. It's been a good way, like when we have controversial issues, like I said, I got out my tax bill and just went through it and said, here's what all of this means. And we've done that like in the middle of garbage. And when we have kind of contentious things, it's been helpful to say, look, you can go here and this, and they're all saved, so you can look up my tax deep dive from 2 years ago. And the information's still the same. So anyway, but I also don't think everyone has to do social media. Like, I don't think,
I
I
pull from
think-
yours and then the city, and it makes it really nice for me when I see something, I'm sharing that.
cause when I went to that class a couple years ago or last year, kind of scares you a little bit, cause they tell you all kind of the horror stories of free speech and stuff.
Crazy stuff, and like, that is not what people are doing.
Yeah.
If they are, you should see what they did.
That is the same lady that taught it this year again.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't go to it. Okay, let's move on if that's okay. I already said that budgets or policy documents. I know that other people have strategic planning meetings where they kind of do a retreat and just talk over budget all day. That may be something that we consider doing. I think people do that like in the fall, like well before the before the budget season so that we have an overarching, like feel for what the council wants to do. I don't think it's broke. Like, I think we are very involved in our budget process, and I think generally, our goals align with the staff's. And then there are a lot of things that are outside of our control, but anyway, that may be something that we talk about doing in the future. I thought that was an interesting suggestion. And then I went to a First Amendment class, and holy moly, it was very graphic. Like he would just show videos of city councils elsewhere. And I mean, just the most profane and obscene stuff. And then he'd say, is that allowed by the First Amendment? Most often, if you have a general comment period where people can say, like speak on any topic before city council, it is very hard to limit speech in any way. So Salt Lake had issues where people were coming to speak on Israel, Palestine, they had to limit their comments to like just the general comment period to 1 hour of their city council. And so we're in the minority of cities who don't have a general comment period. And after hearing some of the issues that other cities have, I mean, like you have people, there's a lady who read like a very graphic sex scene into the record, and it was allowed because she was speaking, I think she was speaking about like materials that they allow at the library. But if you don't limit it to like the topic that you're considering, then you pretty much have to allow most things. So I feel committed to continuing as we are and making sure that our staff is accessible and that we're accessible, that if there are issues that need to be raised, that it's not a surprise attack. It's let me address this and, funnel you to the right person. So, and if we do need to take city council action, then we do in the proper way. So, anyway, I think there's some things that maybe are defensive that maybe we want to consider. You can say no booing and clapping. And you can also say no signs. I think the problem is if you wait to be reactive on that, it's a harder pill to swallow rather than just saying like, look, we're trying to keep our meeting, efficient. And so booing and clapping, as you might imagine, can make a meeting last double the time because after everything someone says, people are weighing in. Another thing, and Ellen, I don't know if this is possible, but I think it'd be really great if we do, because so far I just use my phone to time people, but will we have the ability to show a timer in our new city council chambers?
I'm just gonna say no, so I don't have to figure out a way to do it. But this new no, we can, because the new city council, just so you know, one of the comments that we received from the general public is that, yes, we are the only city that live streams our meetings. However, it's very difficult to see the things on the screen and the content of what you guys are discussing and going over. The new screen is just, I'm very excited because I'm not very cutting edge with technology. Buzzy tries to be, but at the same time,
Use Google, I'll tell you.
the new system, the way it's been described is it'll have 2 cameras, but there will be kind of like an NFL producer where they pick which screen is showing what to the YouTube channel. And one of the screens actually takes the actual screen itself and puts that as the main item for the viewers. So that screen right there up on the wall would be what the viewer at home looks at as we're going through those items. So budgetary items, this document, they would be able to view that at home. And so, sorry, that's just a point to say we have a lot of new technology, and I can guarantee we can put together just a quick timer, and I'll see what the easiest method for that is.
Well, and maybe it's just me having a timer on my computer and
Either
having,
way. And even if it's up on the corner of a screen or something somewhere, that'll just show that everyone gets the same allotted amount.
Yeah,
Their comments.
and then there's no question that, I'm giving someone more than 2 or less than 2.
Yeah.
So, anyway, but it was super interesting. It was a really interesting thing. I don't know if non-lawyers would have thought it was that fascinating, but I thought it was really, really interesting.
I went to that one a couple of years ago and I thought it was fascinating, and I'm not a lawyer.
So with the non-clapping, non-booing policy, I agree with you that it would be good to be proactive on that. What does that require? Does that require?
I think it's just I think it may just require saying, I have that thing that I read. Maybe we just add it to that.
Okay,
Like,
so it's not
just
like,
part of the public speaking rules. I don't think
Yeah,
it needs to
okay.
necessarily be
I can
codified.
tell you about one meeting I've been in where a comment even needed to be made because it was getting out of hand.
we had a planning commission meeting last year. Scott probably
Oh,
remembers
yeah.
that when,
I know which one you're
Plenty.
talking about.
yeah, it would have been nice to have had that policy there at that
I
time.
think that'd be good, like, and yeah, you hope that you're doing a good enough job that people don't feel like they have to, but it does, like, there are just certain topics that get really emotional. And it's not really, I think that facilitates for your speech, right? Like, if you're talking and you're not getting interrupted by either booing or clapping. So anyway, that may be something, Marie, I know I've edited that document before, but maybe we just edit that document to just add that to rules. So,
I think it's really important to hear people though, and I feel like, like we're pretty empty right now, but I would love for people to be here, but they feel like when we come, there's no voice that, they can't say anything. So I don't know how we reach, to give them an opportunity. Obviously, they can write in and request, but it is nice to hear feedback from people. But it's hard to manage it. So that is, I think, probably the hardest.
I will say, just in discussing it with other mayors, I've asked them that, like, how often are you getting things that are actionable, like helpful? And it's infrequent from what I've heard.
Mhm.
So I agree with you, Johnny. Like, I think in an ideal world, you have an open comment session and people come with, like, concerns that they have. I hope that that's the message that we're conveying to people generally, that if you email me, I will email you back. And if there's an issue, I mean, I routinely punt it to department heads, like, if there's an issue. And so then I'm like, well, is it a better thing? So there's a person who is really sad to see the trees go out here. So I emailed him, and you as well. But you didn't email me, right? Okay. So what I did in that situation was, I said, Alan, I don't even know which trees he's talking about. And Alan let me know that we've had to cut those down to work on all of our utilities. So stormwater, culinary, irrigation, I think electrical, communications. But that we're going to be planting 30 more trees, ultimately in this area. So those will be replaced, but it was necessary for us to cut them down. So I guess my question is, like, just using that as an example, is it helpful to do that on the spot in the middle of city council when I wouldn't have been able to answer that question? Or is it helpful? Because to me, that's one-on-one, right? Like, I'm speaking one-on-one with this person who has a legitimate concern. And he was very, very kind in response. And, we had a very civil exchange. So I guess my point is, like, my concern comes when we aren't addressing citizens' issues, when people are, but I would say that people who want actual solutions, then you come to staff, because most often we on the council aren't addressing those kind of day-to-day concerns. We don't know enough to respond immediately. And so that's where I just, anyway, I
Alan's
lean
given
towards.
me
Sorry,
that
the mayor,
guidance before, and that was really, really helpful. But I mean, at first I was like, well, but I learned so much because I'm so new at this. So
so the
it was
mayor
nice
brought
to
up
know that.
a vital principle though for just effectiveness and efficiency within a city. So we used to call it the toilet paper principle, but it's more like the pothole principle. The pothole principle is there's a pothole in a road. And we've had new city council members in the past that come here and they sit through the meeting, and at the end they say, Alan, Jordan, Colby, there was a pothole on such and such location. And then they stare at us. The reason that that's not effective is basically the week before then, when they saw the pothole, they could either go on the city's website to the complaint form or concern form, fill it out right then and there, or just email a city department head and say, there's a pothole on this. Are you aware of this? And half the time they'll say yes, or half the time they'll say, no, I wasn't. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. We'll take care of it. That is the pothole principle, because you might wait 2 weeks to bring that up in a city council. You basically hurt your relationship with that department head by bringing it up in front of everyone, saying, here's the pothole. Whereas you could have taken care of that and probably had it patched within that week, and maybe save some vehicles during that time. It's the pothole principle. Now that can even apply to like land use principles though. So someone calls up and says, hey, can I build an ADU? So they call up Scott Perks and they have their answer within an hour or two of just an email or something else comes up. Or you could wait till the next city council, come up to the microphone and say, hey, I'd like an ADU at this location. That's why that principle of effectiveness is much more effective by just reaching out to the city, filling out forms, reaching out by phone or email, and saying, can we get this fixed? And then if it's something like the mayor said that's actionable, or a code needs to be changed, or there's error in the code, or a zone is off or something else, I can't give a good example, but then it's added to the agenda. It's brought up as a formal item. It's brought up as a discussion item. And then that is the legislative body of the city council to change that item at that time.
And just the other thing about that I was talking to the attorney that was leading the First Amendment one. The other issue that you have is that OPMA prohibits you from discussing and or acting upon like an item that isn't noticed properly. And so that's you have both a First Amendment concern and then you have a OPMA concern, where if someone said, hey, your ordinance says this and it really shouldn't, then if you address that in a meeting, or if you give any assurance that, oh yeah, we'll get that fixed, you kind of run afoul of OPMA. And so I'm with you, Johnny. I think our interests are aligned in making sure that we're hearing from people and that we get good input. So I want to make sure, like, I want to have regular kind of checkups in that way. But after going to this class, I felt even more convinced that there are better ways and more efficient ways, and not just efficiency, but also just like really actually addressing people's concerns. I think is done via direct communication. So, Alan, do you want to talk about your takeaways?
I'll just go really quick. Mine is probably just mainly the first item here. This came from 2 or 3 different sessions I went through over the week with city managers and other individuals. But it was good examples from other cities where, with all of the legislation that Emily talked about coming down through the pipe, 500 and something bills this past year, record setting every year. Legislators are extremely busy during the session. And so they talked about the ways that they've really developed an extremely effective and really helpful relationship with their legislators. And some of that is just, we've done this in the past, but holding maybe 1 or 2 lunch meetings during the year, bringing up concerns that you may have, or things that they may not be aware of, or things that we're hearing from constituencies the constituents that they may not be hearing. But in our case, tonight we brought up a few, like, well, we haven't brought this up. Jordan will bring this up, but water funding. I mean, we really need to talk about that. When they're pushing endless housing, are they going to back it up with saying, and we'll help you with water funding? It's a double-edged sword. So bringing that up with them, making sure they're aware, stop necessary overreach regarding zoning and housing. Another one is just tier 2. And the mayor already brought this up. Can their bills be handled with a simple phone call? Do you want to just reach out to the entity that's causing the problem? But then it goes on to this city was fantastic. Throughout the year, this is one thing that we've talked about. Emily's brought this up as well. Everyone comes to kind of the same conclusion, where we need to put together maybe a flyer that every 6 months or every 4 months we send to the state legislators in our area, and even post it online and say, this is the number of entitled units in North Logan City. This is the number of houses that we have that are available. This is the number of units that are in the process right now, just so people know how much is available in North Logan City. And is North Logan doing its part? Yes, is the answer right now, but people need to know that and what's happening. So it's basically just communicating that, because half the bills are related to housing. in some way, shape or form.
I'm all ears on this one because we did do this lunch with the legislators before the session. And there were some bills that came from our valley. I can think of 3 off the top of my head that came from our valley, and our legislators did not ask us. Like, they didn't even say, hey, what do you think about this? One of those is that they have given power to the county auditor's office to strike if they feel that truth and taxation hearings were insufficient, that they can repeal the tax increase. And if that doesn't scare you, I will tell you what happened 2 years ago, which is that the county went vigilante and they attended truth and taxation hearings, and they had a very arbitrary and unrealistic standard of what the law required. And I can let you read the 3-page letter of pointing out all of the flaws in what they think was required, and it was a complete misinterpretation of the law. And if they had had that power, then they likely would have undone what the city councils did. And I think that that is really terrible policy, and not a phone call to, as far as I know, any of the mayors that this affects. And so I think one of the big hurdles that we have is removing this hostility towards cities. And I don't know how to address it, but just kind of this presumption that cities are bad actors and that they're motivated by something other than serving their citizens. So I am all ears if anyone has any suggestions on this. I think that generally legislators mean well, but it's kind of getting to the point where it's insufficient.
I've still been surprised. Oh, okay.
Well, I was just gonna, with the lunch, I like the suggestion, but are they suggesting that that's better done? Like each of us individually contacts the legislators and goes out to lunch with them one-on-one, or
I don't
It
think
was
as a
a-
body, we are
It was
going
more
out?
a couple of city council members and the mayor, maybe some staff that get together with them if they are interested in having multiple. These were cities that had had a traditionally bad relationship. We don't have a bad relationship with our legislators.
right.
It's more just communicating, making sure they're up to date on things.
Mhm.
And so it's it's something that's easy and simple to do, to sit down when they're not in session. When they're in session, they are just swamped.
Yeah,
to be
and
honest.
that makes
Even
sense.
right before and right after. But then the other thing that this other city did that had a traditionally bad relationship is they basically quasi mandated that their legislator report back to them each week as to what they were doing. And they would get a report from that legislator as to what they were working on. And basically that city has a fantastic relationship with their legislator now, because their legislator did that. They just requested a simple request, just send us back a report of what you're working on and what bills are coming down the pike that will really affect us.
I think one of
And
the
they
most
did that.
shocking things to me in my time is that we haven't really had any type of workshop with our legislators. And I actually, Chris is a good guy. I think he would. And I'm surprised. I think I saw Mike here once. He did come to one council meeting, but the fact that we don't have even a first name relationship, a lot of us or some of us
Yeah.
with these individuals, says something. Like, what are they representing if they're not representing the cities in which they live, in which case our, legislator is in that situation. And it's really hard. I think it's just a tough situation right now where everything's so cynical when it comes to that body. And part of that might be because of the fact we just don't speak with them here. Do they even get valid input from those that are trying to defend their citizens and some of the stuff that you've talked about?
And I'm wondering,
So I don't know. And I was texting with them during the session, and I don't know. I'm being very candid here, but it's tricky. And I think maybe a out of session lunch meeting would be great. I think that's a good start.
Could we do that with all of us, or would we have to limit because of?
We'd have to not have a quorum.
Yeah, you'd have to have 2 city council members and the mayor,
Well,
but
I
you
like
could
the idea of
rotate
like a
through and have
workshop
2 of
as
them.
one Like we do with the planning commission, something that actually is on record, but it's more of a workshop.
Well, I mean-
design.
I like that too, Buzzy.
Yeah.
That'd be
I think
good.
that that would allow them to see like what our biggest concerns are, because I guarantee if we said like, hey, we're really concerned about X, Y, and Z, they'd be like, we are too, and it's like, great. Here's some things that haven't worked thus far, And I'm thinking like, I don't know, there's just something about giving them as much information as possible, because like, there is something like, we'll use one of the bills that passed, the bill that they originally tried to pass with the inspection, building inspection bill. Like, the more information I heard from cities, I actually found myself being like, who proposed this and what city are they mad at and what happened?
Yeah.
Because coming to find out that like most cities are responding within 24 hours to building inspection requests, I'm like, that seems very reasonable. But your ask in this bill is to basically allow developers to kind of bully building inspectors is what it was ultimately gonna turn into, and I don't like that. Like,
I-
you know, that seems like a public safety concern a little bit.
I think what you're describing is something that's very crucial, and that is there's so many, with 500 bills coming
Mhm.
across their desk.
They don't
Put
have-
yourself in their shoes, like that is an endless amount of legislation, proposed legislation coming through at the state. How are they supposed to go in depth and know the implications of each one of those items? And that was the case when we sat down with our local legislators regarding SB 174, which is a
Mhm.
horrible bill. And when we sat down with it, though, they don't have time to go through every little aspect of it. And
quite frankly, we don't know.
and we
Like,
don't-
I think we were taken off guard by the fact that what it does is push out small developers. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
anyone foresaw that. So, so do less bills is the answer.
Yeah. Or when
That's
we
what the
sit
governor
down, we just
said.
say, these are concerns with bills that are coming down the pike or that weren't passed last time that we know will come up. And saying, do you realize these implications of these? And it's just an education factor. I mean, they really see those things very quickly when you bring it up to their.
Yeah, and I will say they're always very, like, both Chris and Mike have been really open to discussion about it. I think that we just need to find a way to do it outside of the legislation.
Yeah.
And maybe I like that idea of just saying, hey, look, send me a quick text that you can copy and paste to every other mayor in your constituents,
Mhm.
but just say like, what are you working on this week? What do I need to know? Cause we got blindsided by a few that were just
Yeah.
kind of like last minute, contact your legislator right now. And we did. And sometimes our texts got read, sometimes they didn't. And that's even with like multiple mayors in Cache County saying, hey, please don't do this.
And I think, like you said, though, it's building the relationship up before then, knowing what's on the docket, knowing what we're concerned about beforehand, because they're not gonna have a lot of time during the legislative session.
Right. They just don't
When you have
legitimately.
500 bills coming across your desk, what the heck are they supposed to do at that point? Like, it's just
Nice
rough.
that you even recognize that, because I don't think everybody puts themselves in that particular person's seat and says,
Yeah.
you know, how would that be?
Oh, I think that's easy to see. Like, it would be really hard. And you have a ton of pressures behind the scenes, so I get it.
But they
And
also
we
don't
don't-
come from
the-
city or county government, and that's also a concern, is
The-
that they don't have some institutional knowledge that comes from like, oh, I sat on a city council, or I sat on a county council, or.
I
was-
know how the development process
Yes.
works.
Yeah.
I mean,
The-
I would
once I'll
take
go
that.
Do some things where I'm
The-
like, do you even know what we do? Like, and that can add a little bit of friction, but I feel like a workshop idea can be really
Yeah.
good to be like, hey, let's just show you like, this is what we're doing.
Ours is easier though, because like the other cities that have that bad relationship, those legislators are developers. We don't have developers as our legislators. That is a key fact that
Yeah.
we've got.
It's a good point.
But the other cities that have the bad relationship or the tough, I'd say a very hard relationship is when you've got a developer that's a legislator. And their bills are just gonna be housing, like to no end. And so that's why we have a leg up in sitting down. And I like the ideas that you guys have brought up by going through that. I'll go through these other items really quickly though. Budget items is the same as what Mayor brought up, and it was brought up in multiple different classes throughout that week. But it's basically, do we want to sit down and have a budget priority meeting at some point and go over those? Where you look at your budget and you just go over not just the numbers, but where are you putting your money and what are your priorities in what you're focusing on? Bountiful City has a great example of budget policies. Theirs are more like thresholds. If you go to this level of fund balance, then you do this. Like it's very stepwise as you go through that. It's very detailed. Although I was kind of giggling when I saw how much their fund balance was and it was off the charts. And so I just laughed. I was like, we don't have that amount of fund balance, but still the same principle was very well done. Bountiful does a very good job with that. Clearfield and South Jordan have been the kind of leaders of the pack in budget priority. How do you sit down and go over that? They'll go to 2-day excursions with their city council. We can't do that unless the city council wants to, and you'll pay your own way, but at the same
Don't
token.
forget about the tier 2 things. We're
Yeah.
spending that
It's-
'Aren't we
6,700.
getting a fun place here?
It's-
Maybe they.
There you go. We can go there. But it's more just the same principle, getting together, prioritizing, sitting down with the department heads and going over what are the budget priorities. So I think that's a fantastic point and something we'll look into. The last one is employee culture. This was a fantastic presentation by an individual that works for North Salt Lake. Hats off to him. It was incredible what he has done. He completely flipped the city upside down, and they are very productive now and fantastic with everything they're doing and a very fun place to work. I thought North Logan was the number one in the state when we went down. We looked at culture. We were,
Are you saying we're maybe number two? Whoa,
Whoa,
whoa, whoa, whoa.
Let's shock you.
wait for it. He put us to shame.
Get camera.
It was really cool. Okay, we're still number one in the valley.
Motion to
There you go. But what I talk about with that is employee recognition, employee culture development, employee personnel development, the things that we do across the board, the things that each of the department heads do. They're really the keys in putting those things together. It was fantastic. I mean, but then I went down there and they took everything that we had been doing and it was off the charts. What it did is they developed things on programs and fun games and everything for the employees. But it was kind of a bait and switch type of thing, because then it tricked the employees into using those same types of challenges and everything else with their performance. And so they were competing against each other for just metrics that they'd put together. It was really cool the way that it was done. Things that we'll probably look into with North Logan, just so you know, with the culture and the development.
Just so you know.
We will be number one. We can't be number two.
Okay.
We're
Can't
both
wait
north.
until Alan comes with some sort of maze for you guys to work through.
We'll give up some of that park space to get to number one.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the league this year was really great and
It's some
learned
really
a
good things,
bunch.
yeah.
I think the spring one is my favorite, so.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Scott, why don't you, thank you for being efficient.
Yeah, real quick, I already emailed this out to everybody, so you should have this in your email, but I wanted to kind of just bring up a couple of dates on the general plan. Not next week, but the following May 16th, we'll have another joint work session to start reviewing hard drafts of exhibits where the rubber really starts to hit the road, where we really do need people's eyeballs and feedback and to think analytically about some of these implications. So we'll have a joint work session, Planning Commission, City Council, where we'll be reviewing this draft material that will then be presented to the public for additional public feedback on June 6th. That will be our second public event. Excited to see the outcome of that. Then lastly, Thursday, June 27th, we'll have a kind of a debrief joint work session to say, what did we learn from this public event? What are some of the outcomes? So those are the next 3 dates, general plan wise, to keep in mind. We're really getting into the meat and potatoes of the general plan. So these are important meetings. And then additionally, just kind of not necessarily a part of the general plan, but parallel to the general plan, our city center economic feasibility study and small area plan. The RFP deadline came up. We had 3 proposals, which were good to see, quality proposals. We ultimately are weeding those down to 2 quality ones we think might be viable, and we're doing some vetting of those consultant teams. So our committees can continue to look into that, but we'll bring back some recommendations in the next city council, I hope. So just FYI, those are the next dates on the general plan.
Okay, thanks a bunch.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk about water capital improvement projects. Seriously, one item, every item, it gets more and more exciting.
This is pretty exciting. As Alan kind of mentioned at the beginning, we've basically just been buckling down on grant applications. So we are finishing up the Division of Drinking Water application that is due in 2 weeks. And that we're working with Sunrise Engineering on that. That would be for a tank, a well, a distribution line, and treatment plant upgrades. BOR is a design grant that we're applying for. That's with the federal government. That as well as with Sunrise Engineering. That's for a $400,000 engineering grant. With that, we could drill a test hole for a well, as well as finish tank designs. Blake Moore's office opened up a grant this week for $5 million that we applied for last night, and that we applied for the 4 million gallon tank on that. Yeah, other than that, we're still doing lead and copper. You'll probably see us out in the next couple weeks, pothole in front yards. So if you get any calls or neighbors wanting to know about that, reach out to us, but we will contact the resident or the homeowner, meet with them beforehand, so they'll know everything that's going on.
Jordan, do you have a map of which areas of the city are going to be,
We do.
are required for that?
Yep.
Is that, have we seen that before?
No, you haven't.
Could
we
you
can
send
get it
that?
to you, though.
Okay,
Yeah.
that would be great.
Yep.
Get it out.
Yeah, we can give it to you. We just individually, so what it does is we take all of the homes that fall into that category, and then we have to take a certain percentage and they have to be random. And so then we take that and then we meet with them individually to see if we can get the information. If we can't, we have to pothole the yard. And it's just a 6-inch pothole right next to their water meter. We backfill it and stuff. So yeah, but I can get you that info. Yeah, so that's where we're at right now on water.
Okay, thanks, Jordan.
Bet.
Updates on Civic Center. Alan, you want to give him the word?
Yeah, just a very brief update on this one. Sorry.
I'm all excited.
I sent these guys a picture of the
That
new
was awesome.
council room.
Pretty cool.
Somebody said it has heating and air conditioning.
Okay. So right now, the next couple weeks, they'll just install countertops. They're done with tile this week. All the furniture is in there in boxes and they'll be putting that around the city office. The next items that'll come in are the electrical transfer switch, and then the elevator. Those are basically the only two remaining items. They're major items. And then that's occupancy, but we're still waiting on those two items. It's not exactly certain when they're gonna be in. Then they'll finalize the landscaping. You've seen our Parks Department out there putting that in. It's coming together very well. And then we'll just shoot for the June 3rd ribbon cutting, which is tentatively planned for 5 p.m.
Oh, no, that's not what we've had the whole time.
What do you
We
want?
closed
It was
that?
noon.
Noon.
Oh, I thought you said 5 p.m.
It was 5 p.m. now.
It got moved to 5?
Yeah, but we can
So that-
accept input. What?
That is the
Like I
same
changed my
time
vote.
as the
Yeah.
library, like. the
There's
library.
like 6 or 7.
No.
It's at six. I just know that,
It's just, we're just trying to hit as
no one will come to ours.
What did you
Totally
say,
real with you.
Emily?
With the library kickoff party, if I was not on city council,
They're
Right.
not the same time though. One's later.
yes, not that much later. And where are they doing? Aren't they doing it literally just across the street?
Yeah, but that will be like a half hour and then the library kickoff's like 6 or 7.
It's at 6. Yeah.
We can talk about it. We're trying to get as many people.
Oh, if 5
there
works better
as
for everybody else, it's
possible.
fine. I mean,
It's not for me. I can't. I actually changed my work schedule to be there, but if I'm the only one, I'll just revert it back. So I have to travel that week. So I moved all my meetings to Vegas. So
We
if I could
still
fly out-
haven't gotten confirmation from Deloitte, so,
We could give that tomorrow, probably.
It's
so,
fine. Just let me know so I can, if it's possible, just ask me so I can move back as quick
Okay.
as possible for that. to fly.
we'll talk about that tomorrow and then get back to you on time for sure.
Yeah, I'm,
haven't-
I'm kind of in the same boat. I could probably make either one work, but the earlier notice I have of that will be easier.
Is there one that's better for you, Kenny?
5 is better, but I want Buzzy to be there, so noon is better.
I'm not kidding.
Oh man, I have to
I
choose.
might be the oddball out. That's
Um,
okay, don't-
But I can make noon work too if I just have enough advance notice.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'll
It's
text you
like-
guys tomorrow.
So
The only thing with the community center is just, we'll have a meeting this week to continue whittling down the cost to see if we can get to that exact cost that we need, that we could pull the trigger on right now and just move ahead. Which we'll probably do that regardless in the next month.
Okay. I'm hoping that if it's not the next city council meeting there, that it's the next, but I'm itchy to get over there, and our freezing cold room and then our hot room is not helping that,
I'm really
so.
enjoying this temperature change.
Hey,
I'm dressed appropriately. I'm ready to oh, wait,
well, so we're gonna get reports from everyone.
that's right.
Do you have anything, Andy?
Andy.
Yes, coming in clutch.
Yes, Andy. You need to come every time it makes the chief.
Yep. Jordan?
Oh, I can't.
Nice. Mess around.
Jordan, I have had questions on how long that's going to take for them to distribute their fiber throughout throughout the city at least. Okay. 2 years? 2 years, including winters and stuff then?
Mhm.
Okay,
They said that the first people like would be this fall, right? And then it's just kind of like over time, and they resisted my push to start on the bench.
They're probably starting at Canyon Gates is my guess. Yeah.
Yes. Done. Oh, that's awesome.
They're not, are you serious? 8 gigs.
That was on I saw that on an advertisement as well.
How
Yeah.
much, I mean, how much is for I'm
Does it matter, Emily?
I know
Like,
it's 70.
I'm so curious.
What
just
would
to
you-
get- I don't know. I don't do anything with the computer except stream
Hey.
movies.
Jordan,
like,
do they have a
I'm
map
not-
of their prioritized areas in the city? Could you send that to us too?
Nice.
Okay.
All of us could.
Is it?
it's
Even
well,
it's
okay,
350. Actually,
Yeah.
not bad.
okay.
Oh,
Except for on 3100 North.
Gotcha. Okay,
It's been cool to see, like, it's a well-oiled machine. Like you're not surprising them
Yeah,
with
I
any
saw-
issues because
I've-
they've done it a bunch.
That was
so.
them today, right? Yeah. They were.
that's why I was thinking it might be more accelerated than 2 years because they are a well-oiled machine, but I guess it
maybe
is
they
what it
are.
is. Yeah.
I
could be.
think that may be true.
Yeah.
2 years may be like the full every single place in the city. I can see that.
Okay.
This is
yeah.
very different from other cities though that are putting
Oh,
in
yeah.
fiber. I will just tell you that much. Like the quality, the speed, everything, even though it's 2 years, it's light years ahead of some of the other entities.
Yeah,
that are
and
putting
we're
in
not
fiber.
funding it. So that's amazing.
Can I ask this, again, I'm not the techie person, but what happens when they sell? Then the contract just transfers to the new,
You'd have to sign up for Google Fiber with the next person, just like any of your utilities right now.
So you mean if like Google shuts down?
but
Yeah,
they
if
sell.
Google fails or something, or they sell.
I
That's
just
in
heard a
the
rumor that they were selling.
contract. No,
They're selling their infrastructure?
Yeah, I heard that they were getting out of the fiber business.
no, they aren't.
I
And it's
don't
a-
think that, so.
So just for the
Who are you
record,
hanging out with, Joni?
If it happens, just if it happens,
I told you something. Mark Hansen.
I'm sorry. I'm just not here to defend myself.
That's why.
If it happens, we
Okay.
also Joni a root beer.
Oh, or at least ice cream, yeah.
Okay, we'll cross that bridge, I think. Scott?
Scotch. is-
Marie? I'm the June. I've been terrible lately. I will do it. Okay,
City office grand opening, you have the easiest one ever.
that's true.
Um,
But will it be too late?
no, because it'll be June, so they'll arrive on the 1st,
Okay,
the newsletter.
And then I have July, I think. Oh, you've got it up there, right? Or no, never mind.
we'll look at it.
Yeah,
That's an easy one too with
It's in
Pioneer.
the
Right.
folder, Kenny.
yeah, I can look that up. I'll double check that, but. Oh, very good. Okay,
Okay.
yeah.
It's Kenny.
Oh, it
It's
is me.
Kenny.
Like you say, July is great. That'll be an easy month.
Okay. Alan, your
Uh,
turn.
Yeah.
Just upcoming events, the Amazing Race, that's already full, but the pickleball tourney, it's a fundraiser for the Friends of the Library. That is on the May 17th through 18th. Hopefully we'll get a little bit more information from them on that. All it is just a date right now, so I don't even know if they've had signups or registration or anything. There's the fire department training day or I forget what they formally call that, but that's May 18th. The Memorial Day on May 27th. We'll talk about the city office ribbon cutting. But then going down through, yeah, June 3rd is the summer library kickoff though, that Emily brought up, but that's 6:30 to 8 at the Elkridge Park.
Oh, it's so great. It is incredibly fun. You
Yeah.
should all come.
Yeah, it's great. It is, it's a good
It's super
fun
fun.
event. They have
It's super
tons
well
of different
done.
booths, tons of different things for kids to do. It's really well done every year. And then there's other events. So Touch a Truck, that's June 22nd. That's surprisingly a massive event, like for the effort that's required for that. They do bring the police department, fire department, they come out to help with that. A lot of the public works vehicles and just endless kids somehow show up that day to come and climb all over the vehicles.
Just so you guys know, Waste Management said that they would totally bring a truck to that if we
Please.
want to throw that in.
We'll just remind me about that. We'll
Okay.
let the different departments know, and John Mills is actually helping out with that as well.
Okay.
Those are the only things. I just wanted to bring up some of the upcoming events.
Okay, I would entertain a motion unless you guys have anything else.
I would just like to say our chief did an amazing job presenting at the sexting presentation at Skyview. It was amazing. And it was just the right amount of time for him. It was great.
Oh, I'm so glad you could go. I was running from meeting to meeting, so
Yeah.
thanks for representing, Joni.
Yeah, thanks.
Well,
And
thank you
pass
for
that
being here.
along if you would. Okay, thanks. Motion?
Motion to move.
Yeah.
Do we need to adjourn the meeting to move, or do we just motion to move into executive session?
With a brief.
With a